on here. And obviously, we kind of just were talking a little bit before we got started here, just kind of the little background about the podcast and everything. So I'm excited to get you guys on here. And this will be the first one we've done where I've had two guests at the same time. So we'll see how it goes, and hopefully we're not all talking over top of each other because I tend to do that anyways. So hopefully we're not talking all over each other. But just so everybody else knows, and I'll let you guys do your background on yourself. But I guess Corey and I think you and I met first last year at YSU clinic, right?
Yeah.
Gabe, you weren't at that, correct? Last year. So we connected there, and then we all three then met back again at the West Virginia State Clinic this year, which was a really good clinic. Gabe and I both presented, and it was a really fun clinic to do. And it's something like, I was actually talking to Mary Beth about that, about how much work goes into putting on a clinic and how kind of rewarding it is that once it all kind of comes like, once it all happens and comes to fruition, it's pretty cool to do that. So we don't know each other that well, but even just the time that we spent together, I feel like we definitely are all kind of on the similar wavelength and following your guys' content. What you guys are doing at your schools, like it's very similar to what we're doing at Fairmont in terms of just our approach. So we'll dig into some of that as well. But Corey, why don't you go ahead and start? Just kind of basically bring us up to your your background and what your current role is at Ashland.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm currently the head strength coach at Ashland here, Division II school in the GMAT conference. We have a full-time staff with one assistant and one GA and then myself. So pretty cool for us to have 3 staff members at our institution here. I started in January 2025, so I've been here for like, a year and 3 months or so. And honestly, I've done a decent amount in that time period. So we've seen a lot of growth here since then. I spent about 3.5 years before that at a small school in Western Pennsylvania, Allegheny College, up in Meadville, which is like 45 minutes south of Erie, Pennsylvania, hour and a half north of Pittsburgh, right in a straight line there. I was the director there for 2 years. I had 21 varsity sports for myself, 450, 500 student athletes. And after 2 years, I was able to get one full-time assistant, which was my buddy that I knew from when I was an intern at New Mexico. And he's now the head strength coach at Nebraska Wesleyan, a Division III school in Nebraska. But then we had 2 full-times there, Division III school, which was really cool to see because I think we were the only school in our conference with 2 full-times, which was great. Before that, I was at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, New Mexico for 3.5-ish, 4 years as an unpaid intern, a GA, and a full-time strength coach. So that was essentially where I started my career after undergrad, doing a volunteer internship over the summer with football only. When I finished that internship, there was a graduate assistant job on the Olympic side that opened up. And the football strength coach at the time was technically titled the director of athletic performance. So he was essentially over the department. He went to the Olympic sports director and was like, yeah, you're going to hire this intern as a GA. And the associate director, the Olympic sports director at the time, I don't think he liked that very much. So we had a pretty rocky relationship for the first year of me being there. But I was a GA there for 1 year. And then our full-time assistant on the Olympic side moved over to women's basketball. They cut the GA position that I was in, and I got promoted to full-time assistant. I was there for about 2 years as the full-time assistant, working with women's soccer, track and field, and tennises for a little bit. I went to school in Oregon. Me and Gabe are originally from Peoria, Arizona, but I did my undergrad at a Division III school in the Portland, Oregon metro area, Forest Grove, Oregon, Pacific University, Oregon. And then I got my master's at New Mexico when I was a GA. But essentially, I've been infatuated and loving the strength and conditioning stuff since I was like 13 years old. I was just talking to my mom about this the other day on the phone. I've been like, when we were in high school, my junior year, I was a TA for the front office because I couldn't do it for one of the teachers. And I was sitting there, and I think I read, at the time, all of the 531 books from Jim Wendler and, wrote out an entire, 5-year training plan for myself in the mornings when I was in high school. And so I've loved this stuff for a really long time, and I'm really fortunate to be able to do what I do now. So been chasing this dream for a while.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I love to hear that. And I literally was texting one of my former GAs. He's actually at Finley now. He's the assistant strength coach at Finley. You guys met Tyler.
Yeah.
I was texting him yesterday, and I was talking about one of the interns that I had this semester with me. Great kid, hard worker. And he came up to me at the end of the semester, and I was like, hey, you're going to keep interning with me in the fall? Because when he started, he was like, hey, I think I want to be a strength coach. I was like, all right, we'll start interning with me. And I said, do you want to intern again in the fall? And he's like, I don't know if I want to do this. He's like, I don't think I can do what you guys do and put up with what you guys put up with. Yeah. I'm like, well, I mean, it's not necessarily for everybody, but then I'm like, I can't imagine doing anything different. I think we're all so lucky, we get to do this. It's something like it's definitely not for everybody, but like when you find that it is for you, like I literally cannot imagine doing anything else. Like I don't know what I would be doing. So I guess I should have maybe prefaced that too, that you guys are brothers. Like I'm sure people are going to figure that out, but you guys are brothers. So I maybe should have said that at the beginning. But no, that's awesome. Corey, Gabe, what's your background?
Yeah, I'll go the opposite direction that Corey did. I'll start at the beginning, and tell you guys that Corey was the one that wanted to do this since we were like 13 years old. We were in high school. He was the one designing training plans. I was the one just following the training plans. I had no idea what any of this was, and at the time, I was too infatuated with trying to be a better athlete than Corey and have more success from an athletic side than worry about development of my own education piece. So I let Corey read all the 531 books. I let Corey read all the T Nation articles. I let Corey do all that stuff. So we had a similar route, both go to community college, both end up in a smaller school. I finished my undergrad at Grand Canyon University, and during my junior and senior year, I was lucky enough. I did an internship with Exos Sport Performance, which the facility that I was an intern in is most well known for the combine prep portion of it. I came just after the combine prep had finished. That was the summer before my senior year at Grand Canyon. I was lucky enough to do an internship with Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is a non-football school, so it would technically be a Olympic sports internship during the entirety of my senior year. I got a lot of cool exposure to a lot of different coaches and a lot of different training styles there. When I was looking for graduate assistant spots, I was a typical strength and conditioning coach that didn't have very many references that were looking for me. So I applied to about 500 spots, everything on Strength Scoop, everything on CSCCA, everything I could find online. And I ended up having maybe 7 to 10 phone interviews, getting some continuing portions to about 3 of them. And one school, Arkansas Tech University, offered me the spot contingent on me cutting my hair. So if you guys don't know, I got a little bun in the back. I had a bun when I was in undergrad, and my boss at Arkansas Tech, Michael Golden, very thankful for everything that he did for me. But on our last interview, said, I'm going to offer you the spot, but you got to cut your hair, right? I'm not a man bun guy. I don't like long hair on guys. Cut your hair. So cut my hair, moved to Russellville, Arkansas for 2 years, and it was a great experience for me. My boss was essentially the football guy, and week number 1, he came in and said, you are the director of Olympic sports. You're going to talk to the coaches. You're going to do all the scheduling. You're going to do everything for everything else. And for me, it was ending up being a great experience. It was me and one other graduate assistant. My friend Nick, he's now not in the field anymore, kind of gave me the reins to be that director of Olympic sports. So I did a lot of the coaching. I did a lot of the scheduling. I did a lot of the conversating with athletic trainers and communication staffs, and we did freaking everything for that university. I was statting games. I was running cameras. I was running the entire department outside. And Coach Golden, again, gave us the range, which was awesome to see. When I finished that master's program, which was a master's in strength conditioning, and one of the cooler things within our master's program, Dr. Michael Waller, he just gave a presentation at the CSCCA National Conference. He's been on the CSCCA board for forever, but he was one of those guys. He's the only professor that ever gave me a B in my master's program, because he said nobody knows biomechanics well enough to get an A in this class, so you're going to get an 89.9. I did. It was awesome. But I, similarly to other coaches, I didn't really know what I was going to do coming out of that graduate assistant spot. I didn't have a ton of connections, so I applied for a bunch of internships, and luckily enough, one of them at the time was at Elon University in North Carolina. So I ended up doing a summer internship out there right after my graduate assistant finished. I met Coach DeMarco, I met Cam Ringstead, and I think a pivotal point in my life, I remember walking up to Coach DeMarco the first week there, and he's like, Gabe, you're coaching your butt off. Like, why are you here? Why don't you have a job right now? And I just told him I wanted to be his friend. And he smiled and kind of walked away, and the rest is history. Out of that internship, I got hired part-time at the time. Coach DeMarco's got all the connections in the world, so he connected me with Jeff Jones at Arkansas State, who's now at UNI. But at the time, they were looking for an assistant on the Olympic side, running baseball, women's basketball, and women's golf, helping with men's basketball, helping with men's golf, really helping with everything else. So Coach DeMarco encouraged me to go get a full-time job as soon as I could. So I went to Arkansas State, was there for a year before I got an offer to come back to Elon as the associate director. I was also handling women's basketball, volleyball, women's golf, stayed there for 2 years. And then now I'm at Shepherd University, small D2, Shepherdstown, West Virginia, as the director of the department.
Yeah, no, that's awesome story too. And like you know, very similar to like kind of mine of like just taking whatever opportunity like presents itself. Like I think that's most strength coaches. Most there are some out there that hey, like they just they kind of have the golden ticket and they kind of go where they want to an extent early in their career. But for most people, it's just grinding and making connections and taking whatever opportunities present themselves and taking advantage with it and running and making the most of it and building those connections. Um, Coach DeMarco is definitely somebody that I would love to be able to eventually get on here too, because that dude's definitely always very knowledgeable and always putting out good, like educational, like not just like social media fluff, but like actually like real, like applicable training stuff. So probably come back to that a little bit to ask me maybe what some of the biggest takeaways you had from there. But
Absolutely.
let me ask you this: and you guys don't have to like I don't know, talk down on the D2 because obviously I love the D2 and I'm sure you guys do, and it's going to make us all better as coaches. But is D2 like where you guys was that something you guys had planned on eventually being in the D2, especially on the East Coast, or is it something where like you guys are like you just wanted to be a head coach and be a director and like that was the best opportunity that presented itself? Like again, you don't have to be like, hey, I can't wait to leave, wherever. I don't think that's the case. I don't take you guys for being those type of people, but it's something where like I do love being at Fairmont State, and it would almost have to be like a perfect scenario for me because of just my wife. My unlike you guys, my wife and I are like an hour and a half from Fairmont. Like we're from like an hour and a half from Shepherd. So it's like we're very close in this kind of this good little area. We both went to West Virginia. So it's one of those things for us. It's a good spot, makes sense family wise. My wife's got a good job. Like for you guys though, like what's kind of, been, and obviously Corey, you saying that you've gone to be a strength coach forever. Like, do you guys have like long term, not bigger and better, but just aspirations like career wise? Like what does that look like? And again, I know I don't want to like, I don't know, maybe that could be a
No,
sensitive
I
question
have
to
I
ask.
have an answer for you. It's cool. Gabe knows
Okay.
my answer is cool.
Okay.
I got
And
it.
I could steer the conversation a little bit. So, also, I'll say this. So, like, we grew up in Arizona. Our mom is from Michigan. So I have some grandparents in Michigan. Like long term crazy goal for me, like pipe dream is to work at Michigan. I would love to work at Michigan. I'm like tried and true, go blue till I die person. But that's like a pipe dream for me. My first professional goal was to be the youngest director in the country. I don't know if you read Ron McKeefery's CEO Strength Coach book. I read that when I was an undergrad. Um, uh, and in that book, there was like this little excerpt. It was like maybe a sentence in like the middle of the first chapter that was like, "I was 23 years old as the head strength coach for the Cincinnati Bengals" or something like that. And he's been like all over the place, and I think he might be assistant head coach at Alabama right now or Washington or something like that. Um, but when I read that, I was like, okay, that's my first professional goal. So like when I was going through internships, GAs, my first full-time job, I applied to go to Allegheny on the East Coast where I knew absolutely no one. My brother was living in Arkansas at the time. My mom was still in Arizona. All of our families in the West Coast except for a parent in Michigan or a parent in Michigan and grandparents. I was like, I'm just gonna go anywhere in the country to go be a director. And I was wildly unprepared to go be a director. Um, uh, and I got thrown right into the fire right away with 21 varsity sports by myself. So I was training teams from like 6 to 9 p.m. It was absolutely wild. Um, and during that time when I was at Allegheny, I think it was like 2023, I actually had an interview at Michigan on the Olympic sports side, which was really cool. I was able to go on campus. I interviewed, they had two job openings, one that was like swim and dive and water polo, and the other one that was track and field and cross country. Um, and I went on campus and I didn't get the job. They ended up promoting two graduate fellows into those two spots that were in there. Um, and after I didn't get that job, I was essentially thinking like professional development wise, career development wise, like what's going to make me look better if I ever get another interview at Michigan ever again? Because I told the coaches when I was there, I was like, you guys are probably going to hate me because I'm going to apply to the next job that comes open anyway. Like it's just like I have to do it for my own personal sake versus like whether I actually think I'm going to get the job or not. I'll just do it anyway. Um, and even taking the job at Ashland, not necessarily for like Division II versus anywhere else. I think Ashland at the time might have been like the only job that I had applied to. I thought that I had like run my course at Allegheny. I was there for like a full cycle of student athletes. We had like grown the weight room. We had gotten a software system. We got some new equipment. Like we had gotten all the teams training with our department. I was like, I don't know how much more I can grow this department without like having a huge capital project of like renewing the weight room or trying to get more staff members, and that stuff probably wasn't happening. And so I applied to Ashland, and when I interviewed, it was kind of the same deal, like a very like bare bones department with not a lot of history of like tons of staff members. Not a lot of history, like a lot of good strength coaches had come through here, but I think I was maybe like the third strength coach in school history. One that was here for like 10 years, and then one that was there for like 3 months, and then left. So it was an opportunity for me to build a department. And now, like I love working here. I also love working at Allegheny. I love what I do in general. And this is a good opportunity to like build something great, I think. And then on a career development level, it's another opportunity for me to do something where there's a little bit more at stake because there's money on the line here, a little bit higher level of athletes to work with, and it potentially will look better for me in the next job that I'll apply to.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think building, and I had to do something similar, and I'm sure Gabe had to do something similar at Shepherd, like just building something from scratch. And there were people that were here before me, but like the bar was, in a good way, the bar was set so low that like no matter what I did, if I just showed up to work on time,
Right.
like it was going to be a positive. It was going to be better than the previous guy. But it's also one of those where like that's just not my mentality. It's like, all right, like yeah, the bar's set low, but like we want to like put it so high that whoever comes in next can have a hard time like
Correct.
meeting what we've done, and bettering what we've done. But Gabe, what about you? I mean, is it something where like Shepherd, because like, I guess like the Elon thing, like obviously that's like Elon's a legit, really good
Yep.
D1 school. What does that look like in terms of you? And again, I know I don't want you guys to like say like, oh, I can't wait to leave, because I know that's not the case, but it's like,
Yeah.
how do you guys balance like staying where your feet are and coaching your ass off, but also like, if this opportunity does come available, like I'm definitely like looking at this because I think it's something that young coaches, I would still consider all of us relatively young coaches. Like we do still have to like be aware of that. Like we have to be aware, like, yeah, coach your ass off at the current job that you have. But if a Michigan job comes open, like Corey's going to apply to it. Like it's because you got to do it because that's what's best for your career and just where you're most passionate, like what you're most passionate about. So what about you, Gabe?
Yeah. I think to address the Elon thing, first and foremost, Coach DeMarco is all about getting his employees to whatever space that they want to be in. So even while I was employed at Elon, I had interviews with Navy, I had interviews with the Jets for different positions, and they didn't work out. But Coach DeMarco isn't necessarily attached to keeping staff members at Elon. He does want to make it what we would consider to be the best environment in the country, so people don't want to leave. But if you have career aspirations, he's not going to keep you from going there. From a overall standpoint, I'll say that I was a very generalist in terms of a commonality within strength and conditioning coaches who want to work with football as their main sport. And as a GA, it was kind of one of those things where I was at a school like Grand Canyon is my undergrad. I was looking for a place to go and work with football because football strength and conditioning is the top of the top at the time, is what I thought. It's the coolest thing. It has the craziest energy. It's got the most advanced training platforms. It's awesome. And when I got to Elon, that was still the goal. When I was at Arkansas State, I was on the Olympic side, but from day number one, I offered to use my free time to go and help out with the football staff. And I had a great relationship with Jeff Jones. I had a great relationship with Carter Rowland, who's now at Coastal Carolina, with John Waters, who's an Elon alum, who's now at St. Olaf as the assistant director. But I spent a whole bunch of time with football because that's what I thought strength conditioning was really about for myself, from a longevity standpoint, wanting to go and be with football. And even having those aspirations when I was a full-time guy at Elon, I was in constant communication with Coach DeMarco about what my career goals were. And, Corey was an extremely young director of strength conditioning. And it kind of gives you that itch when your twin brother is doing something that you're not, even though I'm not necessarily trying to be the director that he is. I think, and I'll tell everybody, he talks about being the worst coach of the two. I think the opposite is true for us, but in reality, like, he was a director. And so you start to get that feeling of, okay, can I go be a director? And through a lot of conversation with Coach DeMarco during that time frame, the question is how much longer can I be in a non-football role and still have the potential to go and be in a football role somewhere else, regardless of what that looks like. And it's a connection-based type of field, and Coach DeMarco is very well connected, right? Like Jordan Newsma now, who's one of my best friends. He works with the 49ers. He was at Cal right beforehand, right? Obviously, there's a lot of people that run through the Elon pipeline that have football connections, but it got to the point where I was more scared of whether or not I was going to be able to get a football job, regardless of the level, if I stayed any longer and siloed myself into women's basketball. Because I worked with women's basketball directly at Arkansas State. I worked with women's basketball directly at Elon, and nothing against women's basketball at all. I love the sport. I love the athletes. I love a lot of the coaches that I've worked with and a lot of the people that are there. But from a little kid aspect, the things that light your brain up, things that light a fire in your system. It just wasn't doing that for me at the time. And Coach DeMarco was very, very positively encouraging of going out and trying to find something that lights that fire for you. And I mean, we had a lot of conversations and a lot of potential about me running the football program at Elon. I tried as much as I could. I was like, if you're ever not trying to do this anymore and you want to go into this high performance based type of role, you want to oversee everybody, which I think he is now more in that type of role, aside from also still running football. I was like, I'll run football for you. Like I'll do it. I'll keep women's basketball. I'll do anything. I'll run football. I would love to do that. And at that particular time, it just wasn't in the cards for the department, right? That we had gotten a new AD that last year that I was there. And obviously Coach DeMarco in the role and the person that he is just wasn't in the cards. And I told him that I think it was about time for me to go and at least try to run a football program for myself. And above all else, run a department. And here at Shepherd, I am technically the first strength and conditioning coach that they've had that is solely strength and conditioning. I think there was one guy before me who, if I remember, the last time or the last full-time job he had was as the women's basketball guy at Akron. But I'm the only coach that's stayed here for longer than a year overall. And similar to you, when I was interviewing and I was asking about things that they needed from a strength and conditioning coach, the things that the department needed athletically to try to elevate the performance of some of the other programs, because Shepherd does have a very rich football tradition. They were like, just show up and be there for the athletes. You gotta be a strength and conditioning coach for the university, and then you're probably going to be okay. Nobody's going to have any complaints. Nothing's going to go wrong. You're probably going to be good. Now, there's a lot of things that have changed about the department since I've been here from a structure standpoint. A lot of things that I've liked, that I've been able to do since I've been here. But having those really responsibilities outside of just running a individual team or being the director for your particular sport, actually running the department, I think has been a great asset for me later on in my career. And it was just something that at the time I couldn't pass up. I got this job because Shepherd used Team Builder while I was at Elon, and the guy that was here before me left. And so they didn't have a strength and conditioning coach for 6 months. And the director of our health and wellness department had reached out to Team Builder to see if they knew anybody that was there. And Brian Chikuski, who's still at Elon, who's been a CSM, a CEO basically for Team Builder, asked me one day while we were eating dinner together if I was interested to be in the director of a Division II football program. And I said, sure, let's do it. Interview. Coaches were great. Opportunity was awesome for me from a developmental standpoint. Do I think that this is the last place that I'll be in my career? Absolutely not. But we'll see what the universe decides to do with me, and move from there.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. And it's definitely something where, like, again, I love being at Fairmont, but I don't think if you'd asked me, like, when I first got into this profession, if like that would be like the place that I would see myself being at for a substantial part of my career, just because it wasn't really, I don't know. I wanted to be in football too. And it's funny you say, like, you're still like, if you had the option of football or an Olympic sport, you're right now, you're still leaning more towards football.
Personally,
Like,
yes,
you had to just pick one. Yeah. Well, I was like, I used to think that would be the case. And I still love football. Don't get me wrong. Our football guys are awesome. Culture is awesome. I love it. But man, like, you guys don't have A&T at your schools, do you? Acrobatics,
We have
tumbling?
cheer, dance, and stunt. Man, those stunt girls are crazy.
So stunt's very similar, cheer's very similar, obviously, but like our A&T girls, like our women's basketball, our ball, like really all of our women's sports, like have made me like flip my perspective of like, man, I don't know, like, because they're just as energetic, they're just as fun to coach, but yet they don't talk back, they don't argue, like they listen better.
Gabe,
So
we've talked about this for so many
often.
it's two sports. It's softball and it's volleyball. It's like if you get a chance to work with a softball team and a volleyball team, I think it's just because the culture of the sports, like the athletes that are attracted to that and succeed in those sports are so like mentally sound and like locked into the training, if you can get them to trust you, that it just elevates the intensity and the effort in which they train and how much they put into the training. It's so much fun. It's like if you could have, just softball, just volleyball, you wouldn't have to worry about anything else. Like you wouldn't even have to worry about like disciplinary issues half the time with those teams.
Yeah, it's like our volleyball team will show up, like our kind of policies, you try to show up 5 minutes early, but obviously with classes and all that. But unless a girl has class, our volleyball team will literally sit outside on the basketball bleachers 15 minutes before their lift time starts. And they'll just be out there as a team. And then like when like if they're supposed to lift at 12:55 rolls around, like they're walking in the weight room as a group and they're just going right to it. Like they are like, just like you said, they're just wired a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Whereas like football guys, I'm like checking the bathrooms, checking the locker
Yep.
rooms, making sure everybody's like ready. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's a little bit more
Yep.
babysitting and hand holding.
Yep.
But two things that you guys said that I want to make sure I go back on. Number one, like Gabe, I didn't realize you got to give Corey all your credit for like your strength, like your strength and your power and all.
And
Like
I do every time. Every
I didn't
time
realize
somebody
that
asks, I
was.
give Corey all the credit.
Yeah, that's
He's
pretty
way
cool.
better-
That's
he's
pretty
way
cool.
better
Like
than me.
that's pretty cool to have like that. Like I don't know. Obviously, I can't relate to having a twin at all, but I have two older brothers, and I know just from a competitive standpoint, like just my older brothers being 5, 6 years older than me, like that definitely was a big influence on who I was as a person. Just always trying to like compete with them, and really never being able to until I was like basically in high school. So like I can only imagine like what it's like for you guys to like want to compete, but also like bounce ideas off each other. Like it's like having like, like the perfect kind of situation for that, especially for being a strength coach. Cause he basically, you're like, hey, I want to try this new training method. And Corey, you just tried on Gabe, like before you
Yes.
tried on any of your athletes. So
Yeah,
You
no,
have,
it's
you
and
have
then
no
the
idea how many times I've run Smolov in my life. It's wild.
yeah. And then the other thing that you mentioned too about the Arkansas Tech coach telling you that you had to cut your hair, like that's one of those where like I could see especially like a football strength coach just telling you had to do it, and then when you show up on campus and be like, hey, that was actually just a test to see if you would actually do it and how committed you were. You really didn't have to actually have done it. Like I could have definitely seen a coach do that, like just say that to
Yeah.
you.
In the second portion of my graduate assistant year, that during the second year, I started growing it out a little tiny bit more. And as it grew out, he was still like, hey, listen, no buns. Like, I don't care if the hair is long, but you just can't put it up in a bun. So I just ended up wearing my hair longer during the football sessions and putting it up during my own sessions if I needed to.
Yeah, no, it's funny. So I guess because this is something that I went through, I'd love to hear what your guys' kind of scenario was. And like, so Corey, you said you've been at Ashland for a year and a half,
Yeah, just about.
and then Gabe, how long have you been at Shepherd?
End of year number
2.
2 right now.
So what was like day one, and same thing with I guess at Allegheny as well, Corey. Like day one, month one, year one, what were the biggest like things that you had to battle, like the things that you guys had to overcome? Like I'm sure there was scheduling issues and attendance issues and like what did you guys kind of focus on first? Because I'm gonna have a follow up in terms of like programming and how you guys kind of made things like how you have to like have a system and simplify things. So like maybe wait on that side of it, but just from a like logistics and like a managerial aspect of it, like what were those things that you guys had to focus on first? Like if there's one or two specific things that stand out.
Yeah, for me, it was mostly team scheduling and who has access to the weight room. So now we have card scanners that like some coaches have access to it. When I first got here, there was a hard key for one of the weight rooms. So we have two varsity weight rooms. We have one that's like connected to our football facility, and then one that's connected to our basketball arena. And they're both varsity only. But I had no idea who was able to use what facility and who had access. And we even had like donors who had a hard key access to this varsity weight room, and they would like be in the weight room at the time when some other team was training. I was like, all right, like we have to restrict access to whoever has a hard key. So we changed the hard key. We got a key card access restricted who has access to the weight rooms. And had to put together an actual like team schedule. So the weight room would when I first got here, I was actually not even employed here yet. I moved to Ashland, and I was able to walk into both the weight rooms because the doors were just unlocked. And so it was during a basketball game. And I walked over. I was like, this door is unlocked. That's a problem. We got to change that. Walk over to their facility. Just walk right in. Okay, yeah, this is a problem. Just in terms of who has access to the space and what's being used in the space. Like they didn't even have a like a schedule for what teams were going to use the weight room when. It was just like come and go kind of as you please. And so that was I started in the middle of the semester. Like school had already started, it had already been going on for like 3 weeks. And so I was like, all right, like we're essentially trying not to like blow up the whole system while blowing up the entire system and being like, this is the way that we have to do this stuff. Um,
Yep.
and when I came in, I didn't have a full-time assistant yet. So I was in the process of hiring a full-time assistant, but for like a month, I was essentially just running back and forth between team sessions in one weight room, team sessions in another. Like when are this team supposed to be in there? What team is not supposed to be in there? Trying to clean the spaces. They were terribly dirty. Like I think I got sick the first week I was here just because there was so much like dust and dirt and grime on the floors and on the racks. So I was here like every night after the teams were done, I was vacuuming and mopping and cleaning the racks, and figuring out how to make the space like even just accommodatable for our student athletes. But it was mostly scheduling, and then it was meeting with all the sport coaches trying to figure out like what was being done in the past. And the first thing that you do in the teams is like I just tried to coach my face off for the first, however much time. You take care of a lot of stuff if you do a really good job. It's like all the programming and all of like the relationships with the student athletes and the relationship with the coaches was going to come from doing a good job. It's like, how do I set the logistics up to be like somewhere that's actually, being set up with some structure and some organization? Because there was such a long time where there was no strength coach. Like before I got here, the strength coach, the director left in September and the assistant left in October. And so they were like from November, December, all the way through January. I was hired like at the end of January. There was just nobody. And so I was trying to like clean up for, 3 months of just people coming and going as they please, essentially.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. The crazy thing is like all three of us have very similar stories, and just think of how many Division II schools out there still don't have like a full-time person or don't have
Right.
like the structure, and it's just a free for all. Or
Mhm.
I mean, shit, Frostburg State, they still share their weight room with their general students. Like,
Yeah.
like that's a crazy factor. You guys don't have to do that at your schools, right?
No.
Yes, sir.
Like that's a crazy factor that I don't even, I wouldn't even want to have to think about here at Fairmont. Like
Mhm.
we're already in here from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. some nights. Like I
Right.
wouldn't want to have to figure out, okay, how am I going to staff and have somebody watching the door to like check in regular students to come in and use all of our equipment that we like take care of. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
crazy. Gabe, what about at Shepherd?
Yeah, very similar scenario, right? I got hired. We were about 2 weeks from summer training starting with football or voluntary. So the goal was meet with every single sport coach, figure out what they like, what they don't like, what they've done in the past, what things have been done for them, from them, what they had to do, what they didn't like about the department, or what they initially needed from me. Similar to Corey, I spent so much time cleaning. I don't even know if I have the pictures still, but I think I sent a video to Corey of me like carrying a rack on my back across the top of our gym, trying to move stuff around. And like when I first got in here during the interview process, I remember the head athletic trainer being like, "Hey, we're going to go into this weight room and it's not going to look the way that you want it to look. So like just be prepared before we even go in. We have a secondary small little space that right now has like some leg extension, leg curl, leg press base machines in it. And there was just crap all over the floor. Nothing was organized. There's like excess dumbbells. There were belts and random bands. And it was like this space ended up being the trash room for anything that wasn't there. And then the weight room was just like completely dirty. So that first week and a half, 10 to 14-ish days was just me cleaning the crap out of it. And then meeting with both all of the sport coaches individually, but the football coach trying to figure out what that summer training block initially looked like and what they had done in the past, how many athletes had been around, what the expectations could be from me for those athletes, how to communicate with them. We spent probably at least 8 hours total on Zoom of me just introducing who I am to the team, because they were going to be the first people that I saw on campus. And then like from a additional standpoint, being a pseudo administrator, we had a athletic director get hired while I was here. We had a head baseball coach get hired immediately while I was around. So some of those scenarios that get put on you from an administrative standpoint and being able to be in a process like that was kind of a shock right to the system, but it was what it was. And I think it kind of prepared me for what else was going on immediately within the system.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely all sounds very similar, and that's something else too. Like, you realize like when you've been in a place like I've been here for 5 years now, you realize just how much turnover there is just in college athletics. Like players, like athletes, like I mean, there's probably been more players here that I've forgotten about because they were here for like one semester or 1 year than what like I can actually remember. You know what I mean? And I hate to say that because like I try to get to know I try to know something about every athlete that we have here, especially the ones that are here for multiple years. But just the amount of turnover is crazy. Like the one and done kids, the coaches that are the assistant coaches that are here for like we've had football assistant coaches that come and coach in the fall and then they're gone in the spring. Like they're literally here for 4 months. So it's definitely a crazy aspect of how much how much stuff changes. And honestly, like I think that's something that I personally take a little bit of pride in too, is like being just that common, structure that's still in the program. Like coaches make change. Like our basketball team, our head coach just left. We just announced a new hire today or yesterday, but like we still have 8 guys on the team, and like I'm the only person that's still that they all know. You know what I mean? That everybody's going to be kind of be able to lean on a little bit. So it's that there's definitely like a little bit of like a something that you kind of have that sense of like trying to hold everything together when shit's going crazy at times too. So from a training standpoint, then, because obviously with you guys working with, and I didn't ask you this, because are you guys obviously you oversee all the teams, and I know Corey, you said you have 2 assistants. Gabe, you just have 1 GA, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if you guys want to, you can just basically quickly go over like the teams that you work with that you directly oversee. I mean, it may be all of them. It may be like I would say that I still oversee all of them, but I program for basically half of our teams, and then the other half I give to my assistants. But what teams that you directly like program for, and then the bigger question really is how have you guys like, because when you're only working with women's basketball like at Elon, like you can really get in there and like you got 15 athletes that you can really focus on. You can almost do individualized training programs for.
Yeah.
Whereas like when you got 450 athletes, you can't individualize program for 450 kids. So how do you guys balance the idea of, you know, we need to train, general physical preparation. We do want to maybe have a little bit of like sports specificity, which, obviously we understand that term's not what the outside world typically thinks of it as, but like, how do you guys balance that? And how do you balance just having structure and consistency in your training programs and, fundamental pillars and principles that you're going to stick to? So Corey, you can start off with your teams and then kind of start elaborating on that
Yeah,
question.
absolutely. So out of our sports teams, I work with football, volleyball, men's basketball, softball, wrestling, and then the track and field jumpers and multis. Our staff doesn't work with the sprinters, the distance, the throwers of the track team, or women's basketball. So those people had outside strength coaches beforehand, and it's a battle that I'm fighting with the AD about. How do we figure this stuff out? Our head track coach, who's also the throws coach, he was actually the first hired strength coach here at Ashland. And so then he went off to be a throws coach at South Dakota, and then he was around for a bit, and he's back now as the head track coach. But he runs the training for the throwers. Those guys, except for our distance coach, they all have certifications, and that's like one of my gripes about the Division II level is how vague the NCAA manual is with certifications and what they can use. But regardless, we don't train for those teams. I train, those 6 or 7 groups: volleyball, wrestling, softball, football, men's basketball, and the jumpers multis, and then like men's, women's soccer, men's, women's golf, men's, women's tennis, baseball, swim and dive, stunt. Like we split those up with my assistant and my GA. And while I do still oversee them, I do value giving them autonomy to be able to do what they want to do with those teams, and like learn and grow and make mistakes, while also being open to like, hey, we should probably talk about like what you're doing, particularly for the GA as he's like learning about how to program for certain teams and how stuff maneuvers in the week. I will definitely talk about the programming, and I won't lie, I'm at the facility 99% of the time that any team is training regardless. And so like even when my full-time assistant is training women's soccer, if I'm not training a team, I'm probably like sitting on one of our assault bikes watching and making sure everything is going okay. Or like my GA is training women's lacrosse. I just finished warming up football. I don't have anything else to do at football practice. Let's go watch the GA train the women's lacrosse athletes. That way, like I can see him coach and give him some pointers or whatever. When it comes to the programming stuff, the way that I've kind of thought about it, and I'll bring it back to like the sports specificity talk. As I've learned and grown and programmed for different teams, I've kind of like figured out different models that I like to use with different teams. So it's like, when I started at Allegheny, let me say this, like I love Zach Dakant, the baseball strength coach at TCU. And I read his Movement Over Max's book, and their foundation program. I use a very similar modified version of a foundation program for like 99% of our teams at some point during the year. So like, right now I use it mostly as like our postseason or like coming off of a break period. It's like maybe 2 or 3 weeks. We're like front squatting with pauses, RDLing with pauses, doing some like push-ups and inverted rows and some trunk work, and like I'll integrate some other things that I think that are appropriate for like some true single leg work that we'll do. And we'll still sprint and we'll jump. But like 99% of my teams will use a version of that like foundation program at some point during the year. and then we'll like branch off into like, what I think is appropriate for volleyball versus men's basketball, or what I think is appropriate for football. Like I'll use Olympic lifts with football and track and field, but I don't with basketball or volleyball or some of those teams. So we'll do some of Olympic progressions with some of those teams, and like some of my teams will back squat and others won't. But it's just based off of like what I think is appropriate for those teams. We're still gonna follow very basic principles and very basic methods for the team. So everybody's squatting, everybody's pressing, everybody's pulling, everybody's hinging, all the stuff that we all know about. But I've like gravitated towards certain models for like volleyball and men's basketball. I really love like a in quotation marks triphasic model. Because it has to do with jumping, right? And getting it like vertical. Like volleyball very much so is like a jump high, hit hard type of sport. So like we're going to squat the heck out of our athletes. We're going to do tons of chin-ups. And I think the tempos and learning how to bend the knees of the tempos and getting into some over speed stuff and essentially using some French contrast eventually, like that lends itself very well towards those like jumping sports. Now, like I'll also use some contrast methods with like our track and field and their peaking. But like different sports, essentially I tend to follow different models, but not in a way that they're doing very many different exercises or different like crazy things from each other. But it'll all fall back to like at some point in the year they'll do this very base foundation work, and then we'll branch off from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. When that's before, and we'll come back to the summer here in a little bit, but that's what we were talking about before. Is like we have a great spring with like all of our sports teams, and then you send them home for the summer, and it's like everybody, you have to start at like block zero every fall because not only do you have freshmen and transfers that you're adding, but then half the kids sit on the couch all summer, and it is what it is. Or you just, it might not even be that they sit on the couch, but in my mind, like from a safety standpoint, you kind of just have to assume that they did, like because of the fact it's like what if they didn't like train and you expect that they did train, and again I always tell them like, hey, you need to come back in shape, we're going to pick up where we left off, and like that's a little bit of coach speak because it's like I can't really do that. I know that when you left, if your squat was 500 pounds and you didn't actually squat over the summer, and I throw 90% of your 500 pounds on the bar, you're gonna get buried. Like I can't. We have to have a little bit of like common sense with that. But Gabe, what about you in terms of your coach assignment, team assignments, and then kind of how you structure your guys, like just overall training approach?
Yep. So branching off of that last conversation we had, I also was in the process of hiring a GA when I got here immediately. And one of the things that no gripes to graduate assistants that are looking for jobs. But if you're looking for a graduate assistant, please have a certification or at least have a plan on what you're going to do for the certification. That kind of disdained my first year here initially because my graduate assistant for the last 2 years did not have a certification, and that is nothing against him as a coach or as a person, but what that means is that I have to be around for every single team's training session regardless of what's going on. So my direct oversight was really and still is football, men's, women's basketball, baseball, softball, women's lax, volleyball, and women's soccer. My GA, which a similar story to Corey, when I have graduate assistants, and one of the things that my boss did for me when I was a graduate assistant, again, you are the direct oversight. You should be handling 90% of these things, and I want to be an asset to you, but I also want you to experience the highs and the lows, the goods and the bads, the things that come with being a full-time strength coach so that you can decide whether or not you even want to be a strength coach. And graduate assistants, sometimes you don't, and that's okay. It's not my job to make you love the field. It's my job to expose you to what the field actually is. And sometimes you don't end up liking it. So my graduate assistant handled the other sports, but I was still around. So I still had a say in men's soccer. I still had a say in cross country, the tennis programs, which ended up getting cut afterwards a little tiny bit. And every other team that was on campus, I was just around for 99% of the time. And with that comes some of the principle-based type of things that our department ran on. Obviously, coming from Elon, this will probably get brought up in conversation. I'm not a huge Olympic lift guy, and that was an initial conversation that I had to have with most of the sport coaches and most of the athletes about why we're not doing it anymore and why it was so prevalent for everybody else and why I'm taking it out of the program. But in my opinion, as long as you explain the principles of what you're doing, the system that you're running, and why it manufactured itself in the way that it does, it doesn't end up being an issue. Until you kind of get into a little bit more of what sport coaches have done in the past and the way that they like particular things run. I haven't run into too many gripes with the athletes as much as I have with sport coaches about why they like what they like and what they like within the program. From a foundation-based standpoint, when I was at Elon, I was exposed again to one of what I would consider to be the best introductory based programs. And it is a movement over mattresses based system. And, Jordan Newsma was running it at the time, but it is very much so tempo oriented. It is very much so 3x5, 4x5, your basic main patterns, things that you could get exposed to later on in the program that we want to be efficient and effective at first before we worry about loads or speeds or initial assessments or anything. I'm not a huge initial assessment guy, so I don't run athletes through an FMS or I don't run them through any sort of movement-based screening. I think training is your ultimate movement assessment. Watching an athlete move through a dynamic warm-up is probably your best initial assessment of things that they can do right, things that they can do wrong, or how their bodies move. But the cool thing about having a twin brother in the field is we always get to bounce ideas off of one another. And one of the things that I really like initially for athletes in a weight room setting is Easy Strength by Dan John, right? It's squat, hinge, push, pull, lunge, carry, crawl. If you can get 2 sets of 5 of that done and move up by 5 pounds next week, then you're probably going to be okay. You can get 10 total reps, and those be the best 10 total reps in your career. I've also been exposed to Michael Yes's 1x20 that I love for initial base athletes. I love, again, the 5-3-1 model and easy starting strength type of model, 3x5s to 5x5s. Like, there's so many things that you can expose athletes to in the initial stages of their career that give you the intangibles to progress later on into some more of the advanced methods that I don't necessarily think that you need to use the advanced methods as long as you're providing them with enough stimulus to drive and push the needle. I am a sprint, jump, throw based guy, and things that I tell our athletes and our coaching staffs when they bring athletes on campus is we will spend probably just the same amount of time as we do in the weight room out on a court, on a field, doing things that make athletes athletes. The weight room builds resilience, it builds robustness, it builds the mental capacity to be able to handle the stresses that move through a college athletic career. But in order to push ceilings, I do think you have to stress the system in a way with sprinting, with jumping that the weight room might not do. And those are, big intangible things that I told sport coaches when we initially spoke about, even a sport like volleyball. It doesn't get played outdoors, but we're going to be outdoors. A sport like basketball, where the chance that they run a true 20-yard straight line sprint is relatively low, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's not going to be inserted into our program at some initial capacity. So I think as long as you have your initial foundation of what you value as a coach, you can go and mold it to whatever the system needs you to mold it to for the athletes and the teams and the sport coaches that have their opinions, so that you can cohesively function as one unit together. But specificity is still specificity. Progressive overload is still progressive overload. Variation is still variation. And then one of the main driving principles that I learned from Elon and from Coach DeMarco, from Jordan Newsma, is quality coaching, right? You got to coach. And whether or not it's a goblet squat or a sprint or a bicep curl, I'm probably going to coach it because it makes your experience better.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's actually, it's funny because like Coach DeMarco is like pretty freakishly strong when it comes to Olympic lifting. So it's funny that it's funny that they're not big, which I mean, I know they weren't to an extent, but it's big. It's funny they're not that big on it, which I go back and forth on it. Like, I think kind of like what Corey said, I think there's teams that, whether it's they directly benefit it physically, or like if there's just like a mental aspect of like a football player doing like hitting a power clean PR, like sometimes it's just like, it's just good for their, again, I don't love ego lifting, but it is good for their ego to an extent. Like, there's an aspect where that might help them. Whereas like some of our, like actually this year, our men's basketball team this year probably had better power cleans than any team on campus. And I have never done it with them in the past. Mm-hmm. Like, we maybe in the spring, like when the season was over, we might like, we have like 3 or 4 weeks. We might do some jump shrugs, and then maybe the last week of the spring semester, like, all right, we're going to try to catch cleans this week and see how it goes. And usually it's god awful. But like this year, like our actual men's basketball team was power cleaning into their season, which I've never done before, like ever. So it's something that it's really not even like a team by team basis. It's really like almost like a season by season team basis, like in terms of like what I feel like you have to apply. But you guys very similar thought process of what I am with, sprint, jump, throw, fundamental human movements. Like I think like Dan John's probably been, Corey, you were saying you were reading like all the T Nation stuff and all that back in the day. Like honestly, I remember reading, and I don't think the website is the same anymore. I know it's not. It used to be danjohn.net. Like he had a .net website.
Yep.
And when I was early in my coaching career, I mean, I was literally reading he had a thing called Walking Weights. That was like his blog was called Walking Weights. And I would read that every day. It'd be like little 5-minute long blogs, like super quick reads. And it was, or Wondering Weights. Sorry, Wondering Weights.
Yeah.
That's what it was called. And it was such a pivotal aspect of kind of just how I approach things. And really, like you guys said, it's coaching. Like nothing's more frustrating as like the head strength coach, the supervisor, the mentor, as seeing like a GA or a young coach program an exercise that they've never done in their life. Like it just baffles me sometimes. I'm like, why would you program something that you're not even, number one, maybe not even good at, but let alone like haven't ever even done just because you saw it somewhere? Like that's silly. Like focus on what you're good at. Like do the exercise that you're good at. Like, because how can you coach something that you're not good at? Like in my opinion, like we don't have to be world class at any exercise, but we got to be pretty damn good at it to be able to give a good demonstration and give a good coaching cues and get that buy-in from the athlete. So, you guys both mentioned football, and this is something that I don't want to say I struggle with, but like I definitely like, I don't know. I always feel like, and this is just probably just part of just being a strength coach. Like I always feel like, hey, I wish I could be doing more with football. I wish, I could dedicate a little bit more time being around the football guys, going to practice more, going to the game. Cause I don't even I don't travel with the team. I usually have one of my GAs travel with the team. I come to the home games, but I go, my wife and daughter come. I sit in the stands. Like I'll walk down on the sideline and hang out for a couple minutes at a time. But like part of me feels guilty of like leaving my wife up there, like sitting in the stands by herself. And it's one of those things where it's like I like just being a fan. And I tell the players that look, Monday through Friday, like I'm going to help you guys get better, but Saturday I just want to enjoy and watch you guys fly around and play. Like, so how do you guys balance like the time that it requires to work with football and like the dedication, and especially like in season when you got like 5 or 6 guys that got a sprained ankle, this guy's got a wrist issue, this guy's got a broken finger, like just sometimes the injury like modifications that go to a training program. Like sometimes I feel like I'm doing a disservice to those guys because I don't really get the spending much time with just the injured guys as much as I would like to. And then if I am spending time with them, then I'm taking away from the non-injured guys. And then if I'm spending all that time with football, then now I'm spending less time getting to interact with the other. So how do you guys kind of like maybe balance that? I would love to hear what you guys do, and if you guys feel the same kind of like guilt level that I do at times with being able to give all of our teams, the same amount of like attention and love and like resources.
Yeah. No, yeah, I get it. It feels much worse than it is. And this comes from me. Like I never had the aspirations to be a football strength coach. My first internship was with football, and I absolutely loved it. But I was like, I'm not like 6'4", I'm not bald, I've got a big beard. I can't be a Division I football strength coach. I'm going the Olympic sports side. And I've worked with football now for 6 years. And I love working with football, but it takes more hours than we have in a day to be able to like really put your all into a football program. We were just at the CSCCA conference, and my first mentor, or maybe not my first mentor, but the guy I did my internship with at the University of New Mexico, he's the head football strength coach at formerly Texas A&M Commerce, now East Texas A&M, Division I school in the Southland Conference. And like we're talking about all the things that he does for the football program and how ingrained he is. Like he's essentially like the associate head coach without the title associate head coach, but he's at everything. I'm like, I just can't do that. So like, fortunately enough, what we were able to do even just this off season is get, all 3 of our coaches in on the football sessions. So like when we have 60 guys in a room, I can have my full-time assistant and my GA like covering my back. But in the fall, it was just me and the GA in our sessions because our full-time assistant has to train the other teams because football's trained in the morning a couple times a week. And we can't afford to have all of our coaches only dedicated to football and then, leave everybody else high and dry, because that's not who I am as a leader. Like I don't feel like I should be prioritizing football over softball, right? Even though the time requirements might be a little bit more. I just want to be able to give my best to both of them. So it's really difficult. I do travel with the team. And that was just something that like the strength coach has done here in the past. So it's kind of like part of the job. But I do like very little on those traveling days, which is like good for me. I warm the team up when we get there. Like we'll do like a stretch after we get off the bus. Like I'll help the guys out in the afternoon. I'll help the ATs out with like guys that need rehab stuff. I'll stretch them before the games. And I like do the traditional like get back coach guy on the sideline stuff, which I really don't like, but it's just part of the job. And That's essentially like my game day responsibilities. I want to have more of a hand in return to play stuff. I want to have more of a hand into how we maneuver the training around for our injured guys, but it's really like on the fly stuff. Like, hey, you got like I need to get an injury report from the trainers, but if I don't get it and I got 3 guys here, one with a wrist, one with a shoulder, one with a hamstring, all right, like we're just gonna maneuver this on the fly and like, hey, you can't clean, you can't rack a clean, go do some pulls. Hey, you can't squat. Like, let's try to squat to a box if we can go higher range of motion. Or like, hey, go grab the trap bar. We'll start trap bar and see what feels good. And we're just like playing around with different stuff. And like, yeah, I think about it from like a year on year perspective. As I learn more about what I can do and what I can manage, like I might be able to stack one thing on top of what I did this year with the team next year. Like if I can get a better hand in some of the return to play stuff next year, then like that'll be my one significant thing that I did that year to help the football program out. Or like, if I can be out at practice doing stuff with the guys on the sides, or maybe like, get us a high speed top up at practice for the guys that aren't sprinting a lot, like, man, that'd be fantastic. But that might be like my one thing that I get to. But it's difficult. It's hard to manage. And I don't know if a small school strength coach who has more than football and, maybe 1 or 2 other sports will ever be able to put in as much time to football as like somebody who's only with football may be able to.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, hell, I'm trying to think. Like, I don't think, other than our spring game, I don't think was able to go to a single practice this spring. Like, this is like maybe the first spring I've been here since I haven't been able to that I haven't been able to go to one practice and go out and watch the guys like have a spring ball practice, just because
Right.
literally they practice at like 3:30, and that's like our busiest time in the afternoon. Like, we usually have a full weight room from 3:30 to like 5:30, like every day.
Yep.
So it's one of those where it's like I just it's one of those where like I think the coaches to an extent get that. Like, they understand that they're not going to have like a strength coach as their like right hand man. But it is something where like, I would love to, and and I don't do it for any other sport. That's the other thing too, is like when I got hired, that was kind of one of the agreements of like, look, like I'm not going to travel with football because then I would feel guilty where I need to travel with every other team, and that's like physically impossible. So, it's definitely something where like I do try to send the GA with them just to try to make sure that they are taken care of in terms of like warm up and like rewarming up at halftime, and we do like RPRs. We're trying to just make sure like somebody's there to remind the guys to do RPR before the game and all that stuff. And then we do have a GPS system. So I have my one GA is kind of in charge of like reporting that to the coach. Cause I mean, I'll look at it, but it's one of those things where like, again, even that, like that saves me 10 minutes off my plate where my GA downloads the data and puts the report together and sends it to the coach. And like, I'll glance at it, but unless I see something crazy, like it might not even be something where I'm having a conversation like with the coach all that much usually until something goes wrong, until somebody blows out. And then it's like, oh shit, like what happened? Like we got to go back and look at it. So it's just something where like, that's the other thing too, is like, and I know I want to let Gabe answer this question too, but like one of the questions I had on here about sports science, if you guys have any tech or anything that you're using, it's like, man, like I love sports science, but that's another thing too, is like I don't want to keep adding more, and we are thinking about getting force plates. Like, we did some fundraising to maybe get a plate or two, but it's like I don't want to add force plates and then number one, just collect dust, and number two, we're just collecting data for the sake of collecting data. Like, I don't want that to be the case. So that's like my worst fear of like, not only am I going to spend $5,000 or $6,000, but am I going to spend it on like a fancy scale, like just basically a glorified jump mat? Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, I don't want that to be the case. So it's the same thing with, you know, I don't want to commit to something and then let people down. I would rather like, what is it? Under commit and over deliver. Like, I would almost
Over-deliver. That's right.
rather do that to an extent. But Gabe, what about you? Because obviously you have more of an interest in wanting to be with football. So how does that kind of work with like you balancing everything?
Yeah, one of the better things that went on with football's scheduling for us since I've been here is, particularly in the spring, we practice from 8:30 in the morning until about 10:30 or 11. So the biggest thing there is almost none of the other teams are going to be training during that time anyway, because everybody's in class. So I'm able to make it out to practice. I'm able to run the warm-ups. I'm able to be a part of return to play if I need to. In the fall is kind of a different story. I am, again, trying to, under promise and over deliver. So when I can and I have some time, I go out and I warm the team up. Now I might warm the team up and then leave immediately because I have a men's basketball session within the next 10 minutes. And so I'm running across the campus. But on a similar note, right, if the goal is to be with football in a long-term based type of career, then I have to throw myself into the fire regardless of what it actually entails. So from a like return to play standpoint, I am a keep plan B as close to plan A as possible type of guy. So if things are going wrong within the system, then the goal is, if it's double leg, it moves to single leg. If it's double arm, it moves to single arm. If it's restricted, then it moves to whatever closed chain type of movement that I feel like I need it to do. And as much as I can, the goal is to be an educator to the guys so that they can be the decision makers for themselves when things go wrong. And I have a very transparent relationship with all of the coaches that I work with and all of the athletes that I work with. And I tell them, if you feel like you can't do something because of this particular thing, come talk to me and come to me with a change for it so that if it's good, then we can decide on it and you can have some autonomy within your own decision making. If it's not, then we'll talk about why maybe it's not and why we should go and do something else. But being able to be at the practices in the spring gave me a chance to run some return to play type of stuff and get both the athletic trainers, the coaching staffs, and the athletes aware of what the return to play process kind of looks like for myself from a 7-day, 14-day, 21-day type of perspective, what the weight room looks like in that perspective, and then how they can be that leader for themselves when I can't always be there, or what the at least connectivity looks like between myself and the athletic training staff to make sure that we can get that return to play process to be where it needs to be. Now, does that sometimes take away from being at other sport practices? Yes, it does. Does that sometimes take away from being able to run particular return to play with other athletes that are not able to participate during their practice? Yes, it does. But that kind of comes down to, unfortunately, a priority system within college athletics, regardless of whether we like it that way or not. The revenue producing sports are probably going to get the most time, the most money, the most wherewithal from all of the coaching staffs and administrators. So you kind of have to play the game while also being just a generally good human being to the other athletes and telling them why you're doing what you're doing and where they can help themselves and where we can be a portion of their day, and how we can try to be synonymous with one another to that, even though I'm not there and the athletic trainer might not necessarily know what we're looking at from my perspective. The goal is to just be as synonymous as possible and try to have a relationship with the athletic trainer to make sure that if I'm not there and they need something done, that I have a plan, that they're ready to go, or they have a plan so the athletes are ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And it's definitely, the thing that you said that stood out that really kind of makes me think about it is if an athlete deals with an injury, most of the time what ends up happening is, well, best case scenario is I know what the injury is beforehand, so I already have a plan in place. But usually what ends up happening, especially like in the spring, because we do lift earlier in the spring. One thing we try to do in the fall is not get these guys up and lift any earlier than 8 a.m.
Yeah.
But in the spring, we do start like 6, 6:15, 6:30, something like depending on the kind of the day and the time in the group. But like sometimes there may be an injury the night before practice where they didn't get to see the trainers after practice, or they woke up and it was more stiff or more sore than what they realized it was going to be. They haven't got to meet with the trainers yet. So most of the times the athletes that have been around, the older kids, the kids that have a little bit more like, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Like concern, give a fuck. Like basically, like they basically will come in before lift starts, be like, "Hey, I got this going on," and I'll go down through their whole, because we use train aerobics, so I'll go down through their whole lift and be like, "Hey, we're going to modify this," and I'll go ahead and swap it on the phone. We're going to modify this, and I'll be, if it's a long term rehab, like I already know, like I've given them an individualized program on trainer. But if it's like a short term, like acute thing, that's the ideal plan. The worst case scenario is you see a kid, you're watching him for like 4 or 5 minutes, and you're like, I have not seen him do a single like clean pull yet. And you go over and you're like, hey man, why are you not doing clean pulls? Well, I hurt my hand yesterday at practice. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, like usually it's a younger kid or just kids that don't love the weight room. And it's like, hey, like first of all, just bring that to my attention before lift. And what you said that I think I need to be probably be better about is like, what do you think you could do in place of that? And like let them start to learn and like let their gears turn a little bit and figure out what they could be doing. Because the funny thing about it is a lot of times they'll be like, coach, I don't know what to do for this. And then it's like, okay, well, the guy next to you also has a cast on his hand. So maybe just look and see what he's doing. Like maybe just like have some like wherewithal of like pay attention to see what he's doing. And maybe you'll also be doing single arm jump shrugs instead. Like, so it is funny, like where it's like, I'm kind of joking that it's the kid's fault, but at the end of the day, it's really on us. It's like, I need to do a better job, what you said, of educating them, of like putting them in the position to, take some responsibility for their own adjustments to their program and like let them learn and understand like why we're making that adjustment and how doing, a single arm jump shrug can still give us a very similar stimulus to a regular power clean or jump shrug or whatever it may be. Or a single arm bench press actually still helps you maintain some of the strength that you would have had if you were doing regular like bilateral bench press.
Yep.
So I think that's good, all good stuff there. In terms of like, and we can kind of stay with the theme of football to an extent, or really any of our like I don't want to whatever you call it, like bigger revenue teams, I guess. What do you guys like? So in the fall, like we'll go fall, spring, and then we'll kind of wrap up with the summer a little bit with that because obviously we were talking about before, like that's our least favorite time of the year. So in the fall, you know, sprint, jump, throw, fundamental human movements, like what does like your guys in season, like how many days a week are you typically having an in season team train? Are you doing both days are kind of like the same, like one day, well, they're both kind of just, we're going to hit a power strength accessory. Is it one day is more of like a conjugate style, or it's going to be like more like dynamic effort, speed, power? One day is going to be more of a max effort day. Like, is that different by each team? And if you guys want to just pick, like, you can, like, Corey, you can just pick maybe a different team than what, like, if Gabe wants to pick football and you want to pick a different team, like another Olympic team or something like that. Like, basically just, and I give us an idea of what in season training would look like versus postseason. So again, if it's football, fall versus spring schedule, kind of main approach to programming. If it's basketball, like what does the fall look like? What does in season look like? And like what does that short spring period look like? So, Gabe, why don't you start with this, and maybe we'll just start with football and kind of walk us through like what your approach is with them in terms of what's being done in the weight room, how many days a week, kind of what that looks like.
Yeah, so we'll start with football, but I'll touch on other sports as well. And one of the biggest things that goes into scheduling is what the team has done in the past when you first initially show up, and, you know, having a plan before you go in so you can go and tell the sport coach, this is what I'm looking to do, this is why we're looking to do it, and this is where it fits within the system of your week. So for football in the fall, for me, it depends on whether or not you're playing or not. And that's one initial conversation that I have with the coaches. That's what initial conversation I have with the athletes is. We're not looking to be imagination warriors where you're on the sideline for 99% of practice and 99% of the game, but you want to train just like the guy that's playing for the entire 60 minutes. So our guys that aren't playing, we call it a developmental group, or really I use a lot of the basketball terminology with a lot of my teams, high minute versus low minute type of guys. My low minute guys train 4 days a week. My high minute guys technically train 2 days a week and a primer on Fridays if I can get them there. We are a team that practices and trains on Sundays the day afterwards. If I'm a low minute guy, didn't do anything on Saturday, we're getting after it. We're sprinting, jumping, throwing. It's where I'm our main lower body training based sessions, depending on where we're at within the program. Sometimes I end up doing a slightly more conjugated model where there's a max effort type of day and a dynamic effort based type of day. Sometimes, depending on where you're at in the program, it's just straight up linear, or I might be doing a true strength based pattern on both days, Sunday, and again, a secondary day, but we'll go into that. My high minute guys are hitting a total body lift that's sub-maximal in tension, but it's predominated by isometrics. That's one thing that I think Alex Natera, I think Jake Tura, I think the general isometric crew has done for my career is influence what we do the day after some sort of hard training day. And sometimes athletes love it, sometimes athletes hate it, but man, is 3 to 5 minutes in a split squat a humbler and a recovery-based type of work for us. And then everybody also, so we take Monday off as a team in general from practice, from meetings, from everything, give the kids a day to recover. Tuesday, everybody also trains. And for us, we're lucky enough to have technically 2 facilities that are right above one another, floor 1 and floor number 2. And from a graduate assistant standpoint, if graduate assistants or interns are listening to this, for me, you better be able to run a training session because I got to be in one weight room and you got to be in another weight room. I typically do give the low minute guys on that Tuesday to my graduate assistant because that'll be a day where we're training upper body. I am a high-low model type of coach, a central nervous system model-based programmer. So since we did that high central nervous system demanding based day on Sunday, my low minute guys will get a low central nervous based day on a Tuesday, whereas my high minute guys are going to get our hardest training day of the week on that Tuesday because it will also be our hardest practice day of the week. So that's the day where we're sprinting, where we're jumping, where we're throwing. I try to keep most of the year after maybe week number 4 or 5 for my high minute guys in a dynamic effort type of fashion. I am fortunate enough in a particular way. I use my own money to buy some VBT units so I can throw some VBT on some barbells and get some competitive aspects of it. But again, the main stake of that day is our sprint, jump, throw type of stuff. And then the weight room takes care of itself, whereas our low minute guys are training upper body. We'll get a pump, try to have our general strength-based movements. And then my low minute guys are training again on Wednesday and then again on Friday. My high minute guys on that Friday, something like 24 hours out from game day, I like to do central nervous system based primers with some sort of overcoming isometric based work, followed by some sort of contrast based jump, meta ball throw, whatever we can do. Sometimes it ends up being in the weight room. Sometimes it ends up being right out before practice. And I'm able to bring some med balls out there. I'll bring some bands out there. I can get them doing some overcoming isos up against the wall of our locker room or up against some stuff where they come out of the locker room, they see me immediately, they know exactly what it is. I say, hey, 1 5-second rep lateral push up against the wall, 1 lateral bound, and I'm gonna have you go throw this med ball as hard as you can, and then go out to your position coach. And that kind of depends on where we're at in the year, but our low minute guys don't even participate in that, and it's kind of a real life perspective for them where they see the guys that are playing doing this, and it looks kind of cool, it looks kind of fun. Hopefully you want to do it, which means you'll practice harder, you'll train harder, you'll get to that space in your career. But that's also a portion of what I believe our job is as a performance coach, is to get low minute, less available type, lower skill level guys to a portion where they can play a little bit more. And so I'm realistic with all of our low minute guys about what they're doing and how they're doing it, and what the coaches are telling me that they need to improve on in order to be able to play. And so if you want to play, you better train hard first. You better be a friggin' good athlete first. And then we'll worry about where you're at in the system and where you're at in the schematic of football. But for the other sports, it really kind of depends. For my men's basketball guys out of season, we train on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And it's 3 total body days. All of them are based around high central nervous system based models. And I think our men's basketball head coach was one of the immediate great relationships that I got, because I came in with a plan and I came in with a reasoning for the plan. And I came in with an adjustment to practice planning based off of some of the data on central nervous system demand and outputs for what we're able to do on the particular days. And I was lucky enough that he bought into the system right off the bat. And we've had a fantastic 2-year relationship and 2-year progression with it, because we were able to synchronize what our training days look like. And that also blends into what we do in season. When we move to an in-season model, it's only 2 days a week. In the PSAC, we typically play on Wednesdays and Saturdays. We train on Mondays. That's 2 days post-game on Saturday. We train on Thursdays, which is the day immediately after a game. So it's essentially 1 high day and 1 low day. Both are total body training days, but that initial Monday is going to be where we sprint up and hit our heavier of lower body based training metrics. That Thursday will be a day where we bench press and hit some upper body based type of work and get the guys to feel good. And that's another place where I can put some isometric based days. But that Monday is also a place where if we're going to play 5-on-5 and have full court, that's a day where we can do it, because we're a little bit more recovered and the rest of the week isn't going to be detrimented by us implementing it. Whereas that Thursday, we might do more 5-on-0 type of work. We might have slightly more mechanic based type of work. We might just do more shooting on the day, or we might have a slightly longer scout based period for them. For volleyball, I really only have 1 true training based day during the week, because our volleyball team typically plays on Fridays and Saturdays, back to back type of days. So we train on a Tuesday, and that's a general training day, and that Thursday is just a primer. We're in there for 5 minutes in overcoming ISO, a med ball throw, a jump, and then get out, go to practice. So it really, from a general programming standpoint, I know I kind of talked for a long time, but it depends on how often we're training within the week, and then what the best setup is with the training days that we are able to provide for the athletes to get whatever the best stimulus is for them.
No, I think that's awesome. I want to ask some follow-up questions to you before I pass it over to Corey, just so I don't forget. I took some notes here. So
yeah,
for the ISOs,
yep,
are you doing a lot of overcoming, or are you doing yielding, or are you doing a mix of both? Like, are you doing like rack pulls? You're doing like the ISO calf raise pull, like that kind of that kind of stuff, like wall like I know you said the one you're doing before on Fridays before the practice is like a lateral drive into the wall. But what is it? Like the split squat ISO as a hold, or a split squat ISO where you're like doing like a rack split squat?
Yeah, so depending on the day, on our high days, we'll do a lot of overcoming ISOs. I'm a big overcoming isometric type of guy for a true main strength driver based stimulus. I think it's very efficient from a time-based standpoint. And if you look at the research on again, so many people like to use isometric mid-thigh pulls as a testing metric. I'm one of the coaches that would tell you that testing is training and training is testing, and why wouldn't we use it there? I'm not necessarily worried about us getting an ISO mid-thigh pull on one particular day to tell us we're getting stronger. I'll just use it every day if it's this max stimulus that all this research decides to use as whether we're getting stronger from a training-based perspective. But on our low-base days, it's all yielding base. So split squat, body weight all by itself, bottom of a push-up, dead hang from a barbell, anything that I can get that forces the body to have some sort of co-contraction base to hold the body in a particular position. But there's also the concept of like tendon creep, and there's some concepts about blood flow restriction that goes into holding positions or keeping something from moving while something else is moving in there that I think is massively beneficial to athletes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you got me thinking too. It's like if we get these force plates, like obviously we're going to jump on them. But one thing that I would like to do is whether we end up doing a belt squat or an actual rack pull for our isometric testing. Like I would love to be able to do the isometric testing in season with our athletes. And it probably wouldn't be every team, but like football, basketball, potentially like baseball. But my only concern is if I don't have force plates, and how confident are you that they're giving you 90+% of their max effort on most days?
Yeah, I think that in general there is a training environment and a training competency within personal relationships with your teammates. So I tell our athletes when we're doing an isometric based exercise and overcoming one, the only job that you have during that time frame is to push as hard as you freaking can. And if you're not going, the only job that you have is to yell at the person in front of you to push harder and try harder. Because if they're not giving it, that's on you too. We're a team. We play all team-based sports for basically everybody that we work with. And if you think this person is dogging it, you better tell them. All right, look them in the eyes and tell them that they're not doing it. Because if they're not giving everything that they have, then that might be something that moves on to the field, that moves into the practice setting, that moves on to be detrimental for you.
Do you find that like when you first started implementing it, because I've done some isometric thigh pulls in the past, it's been a while, and I've done like iso rack pulls like as a training stimulus.
Yeah.
And like in theory, there should be really like a lot of soreness the next day, but if you haven't ever done it before, like you might wake up the next day and have some like low back tenderness and like a little bit of pump in your low back. Is that something that you've found and like the athletes eventually adapt to? Because again, it's something that I believe that it works. I just have not implemented it with us for multiple reasons, but kind of the ones that I'm asking you now, just a buy-in aspect, an effort aspect, like you can still pull a muscle in your back, even though there's no actual like load, like, eccentric load or anything like that on the spine. So have you, I mean, you don't have to tell us if people have gotten hurt, but like, have you had any issues where like guys are straining so hard that something bad does happen? Like,
luckily, no. I actually don't use a true ISO mid-thigh pull as often as one might think for these overcoming isometrics. I have created I just vary weekly stimulus from positions that we get, because an ISO mid-thigh pull is an ISO mid-thigh pull, whether I do it from a split stance with a bar in my hands or the bar on my back, from one leg at a time, two legs at a time, with a barbell, with a trap bar. So I try to keep the variation consistently changing so that the stimulus isn't that overwhelmingly similar that things start to get drawn out and boring for the athletes, to where while I'm pulling, I start to get bored. So I shift my body to one side or try to get a little bit more out of whatever position. I've found that the ISO mid-thigh pull, depending on where you choose to use it within your training, is a great testing based metric. But because of the level that we're at and not having a force plate or not having a true apparatus that's based on the ISO mid-thigh pull, that it's harder to get the exact position for all of your athletes that you would want the ISO mid-thigh pull to be in. So I use more variations than I do use the ISO mid-thigh pull. Now, if you're looking for a way to get an ISO mid-thigh pull, I got Corey to do this, and I did it. And friggin' Hunter Lakey, which I think you've had on the podcast beforehand. He's the man. He's one of my best friends. We bought a crane scale for $50 off of Amazon, and stack up our little blocks from one, and I use a couple of different chain-based lengths depending on where the athletes are on the height spectrum to get an ISO mid-thigh pull, and I use that as more of like our pre and post testing true max strength stimulus, rather than a daily ISO mid-thigh pull based type of stimulus or a daily isometric based type of training stimulus. But I think variation is a key in that particular capacity to keep your athletes from getting both stale and bored, and giving less effort than intended. And then again, it's all about environment.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I will say that's something that, like, with our football team, like, that we just maybe struggle with the most is, and that's what I was going to ask you. My other question was going to be like about the Sunday lift. So we typically have been doing like more of a pool recovery day instead of an actual lift that day. We usually lift Tuesdays and Thursdays. And to be honest with you, so there's sometimes where our guys are so beat up, like the high usage guys, they're so beat up on Sundays that, like, I just don't know how productive us doing a lift is. And you could look at that as, a cultural aspect of, like, the guys are, especially if we lose, like, and I've said this before on the podcast before. It's always funny how, like, if we win, there's like 3 guys in the training room on Monday morning. If we lose, there's like 50 guys in the training room on Monday morning.
Yep.
Which there's probably some, like, actual, like, causation there, but it's also more of a mental thing in my opinion. So, I mean, how, in terms of, like, you're basically just doing, like you said, it's maybe more low hanging fruit. You're not expecting guys to go in there and do a 1RM back squat or 1RM power clean the day after a game. But I mean, is that, I guess what I would go back and forth is it better to give them those 2 days of recovery, like Sunday full recovery, Monday to recover their body a little bit more, and then Tuesday we can actually get after it and get a full lift, and then Thursday we can get a full lift in as well. I mean, do you feel like the Sundays are, I guess, the productivity and the benefit is worth, like, the juice is worth the squeeze on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. For me, yes, mostly because the mental aspect of getting up and doing something that Sunday after you've done something hard on Saturday is more important than getting 2 additional days off, because I can control the stimulus and I can control how hard you're going and I can control what you do. And there's also, again, a stress and strain type of conversation that needs to be had with the athlete about, when I feel bad, you're still going to be asked to practice. In week 14, if we're trying to win a national championship, do you think you're going to feel good? If you actually think you're going to feel good, then you haven't been in week 13 or 14 of the season anymore. And so you have to understand that when I'm not feeling the greatest, I still have to be able to work regardless of what that work actually is. And I still have to be able to psychologically get myself to the point where I can see benefit and I can find benefit, I can find progression within my day, regardless of what I'm doing, even though my body might be physically giving what it possibly can because it's strained from the day before. Is there a potential more beneficial day, like a Thursday, to get more physical aspects of progression from it? Maybe. But if we view training as a 4-coactive model from a physical, psychological, technical, tactical, then if they're going to practice on that day and they're going to be strained technically, tactically, psychologically, physically, I would rather do it on that day as well and monitor what I'm doing and progress in a way that I feel functional, that I feel appropriate for the day, than worry about the potential negative repercussions afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's definitely something, like, we've talked about adding a lift in on Sundays. It's just, man, sometimes guys are so beat up still on Tuesdays. Like, we'll have guys that started, like, starting running backs, DBs, that, like, they're still feeling it on Tuesday, and that's after doing a full recovery and having a day off and getting treatment on Mondays, and then they come in Tuesday and, like, they're still limited on what they can do. And I mean, that's just, like you said, that's just part of the sport, though. And then I want to get to Corey, but real quick, how are you distinguishing high minute guys? Like, is it a certain number of plays, or is it just if you're in the like, if you're on a starter on offense, defense, or special teams, you're automatically high usage? Like, if you get in for 1 play, you count that. If you get in for 50 plays, like, where are you kind of drawing the line?
Yeah, when I first got here, it was like a 15 play cap. So if we win a game 49-2 and we kick the ball off 10 times, those guys that just play kickoff have no realm at all in offensive defense. You're still getting a low minute lift on Sunday. I'm really sorry you ran 10 sprints down on there, but you stood for another 2.5 hours. As the years have progressed on this last year, I was a little bit more lenient with what that actually looked like and taking a little bit more consideration into what kickoff, kick return, special teams, punt return do to the human body if I'm in those particular scenarios, even though I'm not getting the particular days. So I don't necessarily have, again, unfortunately, here we don't have GPS-based systems. I don't have a way to track anything other than watching the film and using my own eye on the day. So it kind of depends on what they did, what they're doing, where they're at in the system, and then what I feel like is appropriate for their training progression. Like, I'll be completely honest, this last year, I would say 96% of our freshmen, whether they played or not, were training 4 days a week. You're in the low minute group because you're a freshman. You need to learn how to stress and strain. You need to learn how to train 4 days a week, even while we're in season. You don't have enough physical prominence to not need 4 days a week of training in this fall to see better physical progression. And, luckily, I will say we didn't have very many negative repercussions in that system. But if I know that you're a guy that's a freshman and you're playing 45 minutes, you're in the too deep on defense or offense, I might give you 1 week in the middle of the year and I say, hey, you know what? You earned this today. You get to go with the low minute guys this week. Or you get to go with the high minute guys this week, or you get to move up with the upperclassmen, go join over there. But it kind of ends up just being a personal decision-making process that becomes slightly more oriented to the week that we're playing, who we're playing, what the practice schedule looks like, and what the last game looked like, rather than a strict numbers-based system.
Yeah, that makes sense. Corey, and honestly, what you said about basketball too, real quick, just finalize that. That's basically what we do as well. So Corey, what do you, I mean, you can give us like a rundown of kind of your guys' football schedule and then any other sport that you would like to just kind of use as an example of how you guys structure stuff for the in season.
Yeah, so we'll go in season football. So we train Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. And then the freshmen have a session on Friday only. Now this was my first year here, and so there's some like logistical kinks that we need to get out between myself and the football coach. We've already talked about who's in the travel roster. If you're on the travel roster, does that mean you're a part of the developmental squad or not? If you're a freshman that's on the travel roster, do you still need to show up on Fridays for their fourth day of the week or whatever it is? For the travel guys on Sunday, we're essentially doing like a true low day. Like we'll go and do some like we RPR on Sunday. We'll do RPR before the sessions. So we'll do like some spinal hygiene work that I stole from Dr. Tommy John. We do some yielding isometrics, and then we like go into the weight room. And I use that day kind of like to tie up loose ends in the training program. So we're essentially doing like single joint exercises, small accessory stuff to get the blood flow moving in. It's essentially like that day doesn't drive the needle for performance for us. Right. In a very real sense, like would we be better off taking that day off? Probably. But is it going to help us feel better the next day? Probably as well. Just to get moving a little bit. So we could do with or without that day, and it wouldn't like make or break our training plan anyway. But that's what we're doing on Sunday. It's like a true recovery day. In the past, I've done like a true upper body session on that Sunday with Allegheny football. And I just felt like we didn't get enough out of the upper body work that we were doing the next day. And that was like when we see a lot of people with like wrist and shoulder issues, not from the training, but it's like, okay, I'm modifying like 30 out of our 50 travel squad guys on this day for wrist or shoulder stuff. So like, should we really be bench pressing on this day? Can I just wait until like Tuesday or Thursday and be fine with doing it? Yeah. Tuesday and Thursday this year, we went 2 full body days. One that was like essentially harder and heavier, and one that was lighter and faster. So kind of like a max dynamic effort day. But we'll do like our main lower body work on Tuesday. We'll do our main upper body work on that Thursday. We'll do some variation of an Olympic lift on both days, whether it's like a pull on a Tuesday and like a hang power on a Thursday or something like that. And we'll do some accessory pressing on Tuesday, some pulling, some single leg work, so on and so forth. In the past, I've also done like a true like lower body on Tuesday, upper body on Thursday. And that's just me kind of like playing around with what I think works best. I don't think I found like a model that I think works best for it. I'll still play around with what I think is appropriate for the team and where we're at during the year. This next year, what I plan to do is essentially have like 3 different programs running, a like high minute guy program, a developmental program, and then a freshman program, which is probably going to be hard to handle. And I'll probably regret it 8 weeks into the year. We're trying to figure out what that looks like. But just like Gabe said, the freshman guys are going to train 4 times a week, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And they'll essentially just run an off-season program or like a modified off-season program. I'm not going to crush them with volumes during the week, particularly. But like we could probably squat on a Friday if you're not going to go off and travel and get some good work out of that Friday because you're going to come in anyway. And every freshman, regardless of whether you travel or not, will be in there on that Friday this next year. And then the developmental guys, what I did this past year was essentially just add a set or two at a heavier intensity from what we were doing with our with our travel squad guys. So if we were doing, bench presses, and let's say like week number 9 of the year, we're only doing like doubles and singles between, 80 and 85%. Those non-travel squad guys, I'll probably take the percentage down to like 70, 75, and they'll rep out at the end. So we'll take a rep out at the end of their stuff at the end, or we'll do some back down sets on our on a high box squat afterwards. If we were doing doubles and singles on a box squat or in a trap bar deadlift for our travel squad guys, we'll take either the range of motion a little bit bigger for the developmental guys, or we'll add some back down sets in there to get them some extra volume in. But it's relatively the same. It's my goal is to try to make like a unified program that has derivations for each of our like tiers. Right. So everybody's doing essentially the same thing, so we can all train in the same weight room at the same time. And it's not like a logistical nightmare for me to look at. But, we don't have to be doing essentially the same set rep schemes, or we don't have to be doing exactly the same variation of an exercise. So we'll change some things here and there in the future for that. Most of the other teams will train twice a week in season. So our men's basketball team this year, we were a Friday Sunday team for playing games. I believe we're Friday Sunday.
That's a crazy. That's their conference schedule is Friday Sundays. I
think so. It might have been Thursday.
That's a crazy
Saturday.
Conference schedule. And I think I remember Tyler telling me at Finley, soccer's like Thursday, Saturday, or Thursday, Sunday, or something like that for the GMAC or something too.
Yeah,
right?
I think they're Thursday, Saturday in the GMAC for soccer, and it might have been like the same.
That's just like a weird schedule in my opinion. Like I don't know who thought of that, because like that's not really good for soccer performance, let alone like trying to like obviously they don't think about training, but like even from like a practice standpoint, like you're gonna play Thursday, you get like a very low practice on Friday, and then you play again like 24 hours later. Like that's a weird setup. I think the Wednesday, like what the PSAC and what the MEC does, I think that's like a better in terms of basketball with soccer. Like our soccer's Wednesday, Sunday, basketball's Wednesday, Saturday. I think that's like a better layout. But anyway, I mean,
I agree.
Stuff that we can't control. But
yeah, correct. No, we trained. So this year in the spring, as we like dug into the conference season for basketball, we trained Monday, Wednesday. We were Thursday. I think we were Thursday, Saturday. Same as soccer in the GMAC. But we trained Monday, Wednesday. We had Monday, Wednesday, and Friday blocked out. So if we wanted to do like a recovery session on Friday, that's fine. But I let the coaches kind of determine whether they wanted to do that or not, and I can deal with the loads. And we essentially went like that very similar like high-low model. We were going to do like all of our harder, heavier stuff, where towards the end of the year we were doing like elevated high handle trap bar deadlift and like our bench pressing on Monday. We were still doing a vertical jump on the mat, getting a jump metric. We were doing some band resisted sprinting on that day. And then on that Wednesday, we would essentially do a primer. So like some overcoming isometric trap bar pulls, overcoming isometric bench presses, some med ball throws, some jumps, let him get a pump, throwing like 100 reps of biceps and triceps, and call it a day on that day. And that's very similar for most of the teams. I will say this, for volleyball this year, our schedule was so all over the place with where we were playing our midweek games. We had Monday and Wednesday blocked out, and we trained Monday and Wednesday no matter what. And I essentially ran like an easy strength model with them for the entire year. So it was like, whether we're going to play on a Tuesday and come in the day afterwards, or like the next week it's going to be on a Thursday, we're going to train twice a week. We're going to squat, hinge, push, pull, do some sort of core work, get a carry in 2 to 5, 3x3, 5-3-2, whatever it is. And we're just going to call it there, because like the volleyball team has a very high training age, but they're really weak. They're really weak in the lower. So I was like, we can just, deal with some training and we'll be fine. At least try to maintain some sort of strength stimulus throughout the whole year. But most of the teams, I'll try to follow some sort of high-low model. Wrestling this year, so they were mostly Friday, Sunday. And for their for their tournaments, sometimes it was like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for some of their low guys. So we trained Monday and Wednesday, and both those days were high days. On those days, we would do I followed very similar to a model from Jim Wendler. It's called the Cryptea program that he made in his 5-3-1 Forever book. It's essentially just like you have a main lift on that day, and if you have a lower body main lift, you're going to do an upper body push and upper body pull on that day. If you have an upper body main lift, you'll do like a lower body push and a lower body pull on that day. And we just kind of alternate back and forth between those 2 days, essentially because we were at least 1 day post match for wrestling, and then at least 2 days pre-match. On those 2 days, we essentially had just 2 regular training days on those. Yep. And each of those days had some sort of jump in and some sort of medicine ball throw in. And towards the end of the year, we moved to some peaking stuff. Like we did some singles and we were doing some more jumping, some more throwing. But for the majority of that year, we were just going with some like harder regular strength training work.
Yeah. Well, that's you guys we mentioned the high low a couple times, and it's like that in an ideal world, that's like how we were mirroring it, like high lifting days are paired with high practice days. But obviously, you think like professional sports, like they basically are doing that on their game days. Like they're either
Yep.
gonna like in pro baseball. I mean, I don't know as much about the big league guys. Most of the big league guys that I knew of when I was like with the Rockies and the Yankees, like they're gonna lift after the game. But
Mhm.
when I was with the Rockies and we were in minor league ball, like we would lift at like 11, 12 o'clock in the morning, 11 in the morning, noon, and then they play at 7 o'clock at night. So like you're lifting twice a week on the same days, like before you're gonna play a game. And I think that actually works out perfect because then your actual low days are actual low days.
Right.
Like, and I know one of my previous coaches, Ryan, he's the guy I mentioned earlier, he's with the Kings. And he when he was in the G League as a strength coach, a lot of times he would do basically like actual lifting days after games,
Mhm.
and then every other day was basically just like a little like microdose primer session every day in between. So it's one of those where like that is the one thing that I think if we had the ability, the time, the resources, like I don't want to on a Saturday at 10 o'clock at night when our men's basketball team finishes their games, I don't want to be here like training them. But in an ideal world, like if that was the only team I had to worry about, like I would think about doing that. Like if I was just a men's basketball strength coach or just a soccer strength coach or just a basketball strength coach, like I would think about training either in the morning on the game day or right after the game. Like and
Yeah.
just do it like almost kind of what Gabe said about what they do on their Sundays, of just making it like an isometric, like almost like a max effort isometric situation, or like even like the Tuesdays where you're just gonna do like a rack pull and just get that stimulus of like, hey, we're gonna do 3 sets of 2 reps of max effort iso pulls and call it a day and like get out of there and use that as like your strength development slash main, like that peak force development, peak force maintenance throughout the season aspect. I do want to. I mean, I'm good to keep going. Like I have a couple more questions for you if you guys are good.
Let's do
But I
it.
just
Keep
want to
shooting. We're
make
good.
sure you guys are good. So
Yeah, we're good on time.
let's talk about like we'll touch on the summer real quick, and then I want to go back to like the D2, D1, D2 kind of comparisons. Um, and well, actually, let me ask that first because I know Gabe said what kind of his answer is going to be for that. So if you guys like from your D1 experiences, and for me it was more like my professional, like being in pro baseball and coming to Fairmont. Like if I would have just gotten this job, having only worked in like the private sector and only had some like Division 1, Division 2 like internship and GA kind of opportunities, like I don't think I would have been prepared for it. But being in pro baseball, you have to like look at all the logistics of the entire daily and weekly and monthly calendars and like plan stuff out well in advance. So like it definitely helped me for this job. Like what were some things, number one, from a strength coach standpoint, from just the logistics and like development, things that you guys took from the D1 level that has really benefited you at the D2 and even because Allegheny's D3, right, Corey?
D3.
Yeah. So what were things from just like you as a coach, and then you as a like, how am I going to take some of that stuff that they're doing at Elon and translate that to how I can adapt it to our Division 2 athletes? Because again, I know I'm sure at Shepherd you guys have some really good like football player like that could play at the D1 level. Probably Corey.
Yeah.
Corey, I think Ashland's pretty good at football as well. Correct?
Yeah.
Like in
We
the
got some
GMAC.
good
So it's
guys.
like, yeah, you guys got some good athletes that probably are at least have had the chance to play at the Division 1 or have came back down from the D1 level
Yep.
or are going to try to move up to the D1 level. So coach development wise, what was some the biggest kind of thing that you took away that you utilized at the D2, and then from like an athlete development standpoint, what are those things that you guys utilize?
Okay, so like on the coaching side, the biggest thing from when I moved from like the Division 1 level down to any of the lower levels is particularly on the Olympic sports side, I had to do way more coaching, right? Like I had way more athletes with no experience, and you have to be a way better, you have to be more personable. Like you have to be a really good person. At the D3 level, I thought it was super intentional that for like my development that I went somewhere where the training was non-mandatory out of season. So at the D3 level, they don't have to be there in the off season. I can't report the attendance. I can't even report their numbers to the coaches and who's getting better. Um, and so you have
That's
to make
crazy. That
it.
not reporting numbers is crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. So like I had to wait until we could really only do like our testing during like their spring seasons, and then I could report stuff during their spring seasons. So it's like you maneuver the calendar around, and like 99% of schools in the country like report attendance and report the numbers to the coaches, even though it's illegal through the NCAA. But that's just like a workaround. Regardless, when the athletes don't have to show up, you have to make a place worth showing up to. Which particularly for like the Olympic sports side and the lower training age, lower like weight room experience athletes, you have to be way more friendly with it. At the D1 level, it's like, I my first internship was with D1 football, and like I hung out with D1 football all the time. It's a totally different environment working with D1 football players than a Division 3 swimmer, right? Like totally different environment. If you're late to a session, the head football strength coach is going to destroy your life and call you a terrible person in front of everybody else to get you to show up on time next time, right? If you're late to a training session at D3, like I got to figure out why that was the case and like convince you that it's a good idea to be on time, and then develop a culture in the team to where the team is going to take care of it for me, where the captains of that team are going to be like, the ones that are sending text messages in their group chats, making sure everybody's there on time. They're going to make, it's like you said with your volleyball team. The team's going to make sure everyone's there 15 minutes early beforehand. And I'm still coaching some other team. I can't do that before the session. Like I got to make sure they're there. And so like being personable was a huge, not necessarily a growth factor for me, but it was way more important. Now it's not important at the D1 level, but there's money on the line and there's a scholarship on the line if you're late or on time, not on time to stuff, or you're being a terrible person when you're an athlete at the D1 level, and that's not the case at the lower levels. So you spend a lot more time conversating with the student athletes. You spend a lot more time like being friendly to them. And I've had to manipulate the way that I think about like being friendly versus being friends with student athletes for myself and for like my assistant coaches and my GAs. Now they're back at the Division 2 level. It's like, I'm not going to be a friend to you. I don't need to be your friend. I can be friendly to you without being a friend. But the most important thing is us figuring out how to train at a high level. Like we're here to train. We're here to, get better. And that's what we're going to do. So that's the most important thing for us here. That was like the biggest piece from Division 1 down to Division 3. Like the skill of coaching is no different. Like I'm going to put just as much into the coaching of a Division 1 soccer team that I was with, that's winning a Mountain West Conference championship, as I do with my let's say, my volleyball team who started the year really strong and then lost like 10 games in a row to finish the year. Like we're still going to coach the heck out of those student athletes, and try to figure out how to train at a high level no matter what. Logistically, the thing that I wish that was the case at the Division 2 level more, is essentially like creating a model like Nick DeMarco has at Elon, where we have a ton of staff members and like we can deliberately focus more on the teams that we have. That's like one of the things that I talk with some of my other coaching buddies a lot about. And what we mentioned previously in this podcast is, time, like how do you devote your time? Like I wish I had more time to devote to some of the teams that I have, but it's hard when you're running, when I was at Allegheny, I was running 21 teams and then 11 teams for myself, right? And then now I'm running 6 or 7 teams for myself. I wish I had more time to devote to being with the student athletes more. I wish I had more time to devote into doing some of the extra stuff for those teams or being there for them a little bit more. And that's what I wish we could do at this level. But, like our particularly like our programs are good. We have some pretty decent programs. We have some that are still developing and some coaches that are in and out with turnover, but that's not uncommon at the Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, NAI level, no matter what. Like some teams are going to be really successful and some teams are not going to be crazy successful. We have good facilities. Like, do I wish we had some different stuff in our facilities? Like we have, the technology, we have a couple jump mats. Like I'm going to get Team Builder this year, which is great. So we can finally get something like software system based for us to be able to use. I bought timing systems for ourselves to use. But like the technological stuff was at a very low level when I first got here, which may be different. But even when I was in New Mexico, we had one jump mat and one set of Broward timing gates. So it's like, it's not always the same everywhere you go.
Yeah, I think that's all good to hear, because it's definitely the same stuff that I feel like I struggled with. And it's one thing that you said that reminded me. So I don't want to like call this coach out, but it is what. And I'll say all of this of like, I think that all three of us being at the level that we're at now, and even Corey, you being at the D3 level, I think no matter where we all end up in our careers, we're gonna look back at being at where we're at now as probably more beneficial to us as coaches than being at like the Division 1 level, like being at Arkansas Tech, being at Elon, being at New Mexico. Was it New Mexico State?
Yeah.
New Mexico State. Like it's going to be more impactful as us as coaches because of that personal, like that personality that we had to develop to be able to get kids to buy into our message a lot more. But one of the guys that worked for me here, he did his GA at a Division 1 school, and with basketball. And he told me that the strength coach there literally would write the workouts on a whiteboard. The athletes would come in. He wouldn't set anything up for them. He would only ever coach them if they were like about to like basically die, or it would just look god awful. And when it was kind of brought up to him about like, hey, like you don't want us to, like, as GAs and interns, you don't want us to set up the weight room. He goes, nah, these guys are worth millions of dollars. They can set it up themselves. Like, part of me is like, I do agree with that. I see your point, but man, that's just like, I don't know. I'm one of those where I like setting stuff up because it's like, I just want the session to run smooth and be efficient. And like, you know what I mean? Like, it's part of like, I think it shows the kids that when they come in, when they step foot in the weight room, and like, especially when like in our situation where everything's like you got one team coming in, one team's going out, and like you're hustling to get the weight room flipped over and get set up for that team. Like, I think it shows the kids, number one, like we want to work hard and we want to get stuff set up and we want to flip it around. But like, if it's like the first group of the morning and you have everything set up when they walk in, like the weight room's like for football, it's perfectly set up. You got the trap bars, you got the VBT set up, you got this, that, like bands on the bar, everything's set up, ready to go. Those kids don't have to think about it. They probably take it for granted to an extent, but the kids that do recognize it, it's like, hey, like this coach actually cares. You know, it'd be like going to football practice and the coach be like, shit, I left the balls back in the equipment room. You know what I mean? Like, I just like, or hey guys, go get the balls yourselves. Like, you know what I mean? Like, tape your ankles for yourselves. Like, if the trainer's like, yeah, just tape your ankles yourself. Like, you'll be all right. Like, I don't know. It's you made me think about that when you were like, you're just trying to create that culture where like the kids like see how much we care. Like, I think that's like the huge, basically kind of like what you were saying there. Like,
It's so massive. Even now, like, I find myself. I was just thinking about this last night. I'm reading. So one of Gabe's mentors, Jeff Jones, now at UNI, formerly at Arkansas State. He just wrote a book called The Intentional Mindset or Intentional Edge, or something like that. And Gabe read it and he gave it to me when we saw each other at the CSCCA conference. And I'm reading this book and it's all about like mindset and mentality or whatever. And I'm like, man, why am I so fired up right now to be a good coach? Like it's 9 o'clock at night on a Wednesday. Like I'm getting more fired up to like care more about my athletes and the way that we run this program, like year after year after year after year. And honestly, like coaching development wise, I think that's super important because like we're gonna try to make this better and better and better and better. And I'm gonna try to be a better and better coach, regardless of the athletes that I'm working with. If I go and work at Michigan at some point in my career, right? I will obviously those athletes are going to be worth millions and millions of dollars. They're going to get paid 10 times, 20 times more than I'll ever make. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to be a good coach and like being intentional about what you do and setting up the weight room, making sure the programs are on point, making sure the way you coach them is good, making sure you're like in the room, like your hair's on fire. Because the most important thing in your day is this training session right now. Yes. And the most important person in my life is you, because you're right in front of me right now. Like that's just the way that I think you should be as a coach.
Yeah. And before you go, Gabe, one thing that I'll say too is like, it reminds me, another thing that I definitely try to be intentional about, and I've struggled with it in the past, is like, if you guys show up to lift and you're on time, I feel like the worst thing that I could do would be like, you know, hey, Corey, where's Joe at? Like, has Joe talked to you? Like, why isn't Joe at lift? And it's like, shit, let's worry about the two guys that are here. And I can worry about the guy that's not here later. Like, I should be focused on you two because you guys actually showed up on time. You're ready to train. Like, I should be excited to see you guys. So that's something like I get so caught up in like, you know, I want all 100 football players to show up to lift and not miss lift. And again, I don't even do any like punishment stuff. It's like, I just let the coaches know, hey, so-and-so's not here. Mm-hmm. So one thing that I asked the football coach to help me with moving forward is like, hey, like, I don't want to take attendance anymore. Like, that should be my job. Like, if you guys as a football staff, like if you care about like your guys showing up, like have one of your coaches, one of your lowest level coaches, have them come down here and have a checkoff sheet, get the guys' weights off the scale, and that'll be how we keep attendance. And like you guys will, that way you guys will know, and there can't be any argument. We've had situations in the past where like we have a no tardy policy with football. Like you can't be late at all. Like you're supposed to be here 5 minutes early. And if a guy walks in and we've already brought it in, and like even if we brought it in a minute early, but that guy's walking in late and we're in the team huddle, like I kick him out. Like they just don't get to train, and it just makes my life easier. But then I got situations where the coach was like, well, he said he was there on time, he was in the bathroom, the other guys would have saw it. Like I'm just like, just send an assistant down, let him worry about that. Then it becomes the responsibility of worrying about the guys that showed up late falls on the coaching staff, whereas I can focus on the other 99 guys that showed up when they're supposed to show up. Because I think what you said, it's like I want to intentionally show that I care about those that are here, and the guys that are not here, I can worry about them later when they're in the back after the session's over. But Gabe, what's your kind of like, because we're talking about what I think we're talking about is really the benefits of what we're learning at this level that we're going to potentially maybe use at another level. But what is something that you brought when you brought to the D1 level that you knew was going to help you be a successful D2 coach and help you build really good high level D2 athletes?
Yeah, I think from again, mentorship based standpoint, I view both my time at Elon and my time at Arkansas State as pivotal points in my career for teaching me how to be a coach to the leadership aspect and the mentality side of what college athletics is actually about. So similar to what you mentioned for yourself, I have a 5 minutes early policy, and I just kick kids out regardless of whether they have a reason for them being late or what's going on. It's you didn't show up on time. This is the standard we have within our program, and you're going to follow the standard or you're going to get left behind. And it is what it is. I'm really sorry about it. Not necessarily worried about today, because the people that are in here, the people that showed up, the people I care about are the most important people in the room right now. And I'm really sorry about what happens then. I'm a similar way where I let most of the coaches handle the punishment aspect of it, depending on the time frame sometimes, but we don't have to get into that right now. I think one of the coolest things transferring from the Division I level to the Division II level is being able to utilize the skill sets that you've seen get done at a high level and talk to athletes about the way that higher level athletes run, the way that higher level athletes commit themselves, the way that higher level athletes act, the way that they think, the way that they process things, and trying to get them to commit to being that level. Because we'll be transparent with everybody. Every Division II athlete thinks that they're a Division I athlete. And so if you really want to be a Division I athlete, then this is the stuff that I've seen, that you've seen. This is the stuff that's going to get you there. And this is the stuff that needs to happen, regardless of how you're feeling, regardless of what happened yesterday, regardless of what happened 15 minutes ago. This is what you have to do in order to get to that level. Now, I do think that at the Division II level versus the Division I level, that as coaches, we have to be much more motivational and much more capable of explaining what we're doing and why we're doing it and how it's going to help, versus at the Division I level. Because Division II athletes, and again, similar to lower level athletes, Corey and I were both lower level athletes. We ran almost all the programming that we did during our athletic careers all by ourselves, because we thought we knew what was best for ourselves. And Division II athletes think like that too. So I got to be able to explain why we're doing what we're doing and how it's better for you than what you think you should be doing. Why your current gym session that you're hitting at 7 o'clock at night that you like to do isn't as important as what we're doing right now. And so the capacity to be both a motivator and an educator at our level is probably more important than what we're actually doing, because you got to get kids to buy in. And one of those ways that you get them to buy in is by educating them about the system that you run, why you run it, how the days stack on one another, how the phases stack on one another, and what it actually leads to. From again, wishes type of standpoint, we talked about this beforehand, like we don't have as much time in the holistic year with the athlete, so we better make the time that we do have worth their while and worth our while. And I mentioned that in another podcast, and like I reflect on things that I say in a very critical way a lot, in a very suboptimal way, looking at how I speak about the things that I do. But one of those things is it's going to be worth my while, because I'm going to give you everything that I have. And it's going to be worth your while, because when I give you everything that I have, I expect everything that you have, or I'm going to pull it out of you, whether you want it to or not, whether it's a Monday morning at 6 a.m., whether it's a Tuesday night at 9 p.m., I'm going to pull it out of you, because we only have so much time together, and the time that we're not training together is time where other people are getting better. All right. And if I don't use the time that we have together to make some sort of impactful relationship-oriented progress or physically dominated progress to your career, then we're both doing each other some sort of disservice. So the time that we have is everything. And I wish that Division II athletes were able to have more time with their sport coaches, with their performance coaches in the year holistically. And a lot of what you already talked about giving an athlete a program and then assuming that they didn't do it, is kind of what we have to do, because we don't know whether it goes on. And the conversation that happens with coaching staffs every single year for me, especially from a football perspective, is how do we get more athletes on campus when it's voluntary, right? How do we get more people around in a training environment that is team dominated versus individual dominated? Because as much as the physical aspect is important, right? If we get athletes that train over the summer, great. If we get athletes that train with the team over the summer, that's what's actually going to push the needle for wins and losses, because we play a team sport. And if I have somebody next to me pushing me, that's what's actually going to be a determining factor in whether or not we're going to get better or not. Because everybody has their own motivations that they want within the gym setting, whether I want to run faster, jump higher, get stronger, get bigger, lose weight, whatever. But if I got somebody that's right next to me also doing their thing, I'm much more motivated to get done what I need to get done, help them get done what they need to get done.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. What are your guys' typical numbers like throughout the summer? Like how many football guys, other sport athletes do you guys have stick around? Because I'm sure like you guys have very few guys from Shepherdstown that are actually on the football team at Shepherd, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure about Ashland. I'm not sure how often you guys how many local kids you guys have, but like
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Like this morning we had 6 football players in this morning, and about probably 7 or 8 other athletes. But now it will pick up. Like once June hits, we'll probably get into the teens, like 10, 15 football players. And then once after like July 4th weekend, we'll get into like the 20, 25. And sometimes we've had up to like 30 guys, depending on the summer and kind of the week, which I'm okay with. But it's like sometimes it'll be like a local freshman that just shows up in June. And it's like, I want that kid here. Don't get me wrong. That's not necessarily who we need here. We need our starting offensive line here. Like you know what I mean? Like our two deep is who we need here. We need our starting offense, our starting defense, and like most of our starting special teams guys here, because those are the guys that are going to impact the game like this fall. So what does it normally look like for you guys? Like what if maybe some things that you guys have, like your coaches staffs have done that you guys have personally tried to do, like to get guys to be accountable? I mean, what's kind of like best case scenario for you guys?
Okay, so for us, particularly one of the hardest things about we actually have a really good summer program, and I have no idea how the coaches get this many kids on campus over the summer, but there's a lot of guys that like pay to come back and live in the dorms for however long it is. It's like 6 or 8 weeks to be get with them over the summer. This year it's going to be 6. They're not going to start until June 22nd. So we'll have 6 weeks until they have a week off and they'll report for camp. But we get like, somewhere between 70 and 90 guys that come back at least twice a week, because on Monday and Thursday evenings, the skill guys will play 7-on-7. And like out of those 70 to 90 guys, all of them are from within 2 hours of here. Like our guys that are from up in Michigan or from out in California or from the DMV area, which we have like maybe 1 or 2 of them, they're not coming out to that stuff. A majority of our team is from within 2 hours of here, and the amount of athletes that are on campus that have somewhere to stay over the summer, like a house somewhere. And like one of our big football donors, I know he has a couple of guys that work for him over the summer every year. So I'm sure he houses them in some aspect, whether it's on like off campus housing that he'll pay for them, because it's, technically maybe not under the table money, but like he's going to pay for the stipend for them to get on campus. And then a ton of the people that are coming in from outside, they'll stay the night with somebody that's on campus. Like 2 or 3 freshmen will stay the night in one dorm with one upperclassman who's staying in a dorm, so they can go Monday evening into a Tuesday morning, Thursday evening into a Friday morning, and then go home for Tuesday into Wednesday, go home for the whole weekend. But that's something that's already was set up before I got here, and like that's a huge differentiating factor for us, I believe, because it's like almost all of our starters are going to these. Now almost all of our starters are from within 3 hours of here. Um, uh, and that's essentially the only group we have on campus over the summer. Last summer, we had maybe like 2 or 3 other athletes that were not football athletes on campus at all, doing any sort of training. It's only the football guys. I wish we could get more from soccer's, more from volleyball, more from wrestling, like more of the local guy. We got like 3 or 4 guys that are within an hour on the basketball team, and I'm like, why can't we be here 3 times a week training and you guys play pickup with each other? Like you guys should be doing that because you want to be here with the teams. But the football team will train 4 times a week. I just wish that we had more time with them earlier. So the hard part is that we, like last year, our spring game for the end of spring ball was on April 15th, and I didn't see him until June 15th. So they had 8 weeks off from the end of spring ball until their summer stuff started with no mandatory training. And I see maybe like 5 to 10 athletes here and there through open hours and finals. This year, our spring game was on the 25th of April, and I won't see him until the 22nd of June. It's the same thing. We butted up right until dead week finals week, so it's all non-mandatory, and then all of May, all of June, all non-mandatory. So at the very least, I get to see a lot more athletes during that summer period, but it's after such a long period of time off, and we have such a short period of time to prepare for camp. It's almost like we're trying to condense a summer into like this 6 weeks of training, and I really don't want to have to try to overload you in this 6 weeks, try to prepare you for camp when we're just on campus anyway. So it's a really interesting situation, but it's only for football. Which
Yeah,
to
no,
be, go
go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
I think it's great. And when I talked with like Gabe, and Gabe knows some of the strength coaches at other Division 1 school or other Division 2 schools that are at the high levels for football. Like I've listened to some podcasts with the guys from Grand Valley, Northwest Missouri State. Like Gabe's good buddies with the guy at Ferris, and like they also have 50 to 70 guys that are on campus. All their starters are coming back. Even the guy I think at Saginaw has like 70 to 90 guys coming back over the summer. Whether they're staying on campus or like they're getting jobs somewhere local so they can stay in an apartment somewhere. I don't know how we figure it out. And that's something that I definitely need to do some more digging in on how to do it, because I would like to try to at least like figure out the way that we are doing it. Um, but it's definitely a differentiating factor for us.
Yeah. I mean, I think like even just that 6 weeks, like that's at least 6 weeks that you know that they're going to be doing some
Correct.
sort of structured training. Because like the thing is,
Correct.
I don't put it past I think most football kids, most even male college athletes, or even like your like I know the soccer girls for the most part, they're going to run. Like I know
Mhm.
they're gonna, but are they going to lift? Are they going to do skill work? Are they going to do agility work? Are they going to actually like work on speed development? Like
Mhm.
that's what I get worried about.
Mhm.
And like for the football guys, it's like you go 8 weeks and you haven't done a structured like speed develop, like, and you haven't sprinted for 8 weeks, like max out
Yep.
sprinting. Like you come back here in June, like, yeah, it's great that we can train you, and that's better than having 12 weeks go by. But it's like I get hesitant of like, okay, have you like when kids will pop up here in like June or July, I'll go back and look at their trainer road to see like okay, what percentage of the sessions have you logged, especially like the sprint sessions, like our speed and agility days, and it's like. Okay, you haven't logged a single speed and agility day. You've only been doing the upper body days, the bench press days. You are not allowed to do a time sprint today. Like you have to
Mhm.
do a week or two of like untimed sprints because like I'm not going to have you blow out since you haven't done
Mhm.
anything for
Right.
freaking 6 to 8 weeks. But Gabe, what about with you guys at Shepherd? Like how many guys are sticking around or coming back early?
Yeah, I will say the hope is to have more again this year because from year one, so I got here, my first week again was 2 weeks before that summer period when I got to Shepherd, and we probably had 15 to 20 kids the entire summer. I was new. I think some of them didn't even know that they had hired a strength and conditioning coach and that I was offering summer training at that point. This last year, I had probably somewhere between 20 and 30 guys, and so the hope is to elevate it to 30 to 40 guys. The main stake in that was my own language and conversation with the team throughout the entire year. Um, Obviously, we are a DMV dominated area, right? Similar to you from an athlete standpoint. So some athletes live in the Martinsburg area, some maybe out in Morgantown towards that Fairmont-esque type of area, some in Maryland, some in Virginia, some in Pennsylvania. But this entire year, I have pushed. If you can be here over the summer, that is what's actually going to take this team to the level that you want to play at. Because as much as your training by yourself matters, the training with the team matters more. And it's just more important. And whether you know that right now or you want to figure it out in week number 3 of the season is completely up to you because it's all voluntary. But I'll tell you right now that we have to try to get more of the team here over the summer. And now, the culture behind training in the summer here is good. It's just that athletes have to find their own way to get here. And that's the hard part. We don't house them. We had now this upcoming year, I think we have 2 or 3 more kids than we did last year finding some summer work through the university that will house them to do some cleaning of dorm rooms or setting up for events in the summer. But similar to what Corey said, when athletes want to come here, they got to find a room to sleep in and a way to eat and a way to get here. And most of our athletes over the summer are coming from a Martinsburg, a Frederick, a Hagerstown type where they get off work at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and then they come out to training. So like we'll probably touch on this a little tiny bit, but like we train at 5 p.m. at night every single day in the summer because that's the only opportunity that I have to get kids because kids here in the DMV, they want to have summer jobs and they want to make money and they need to make money in some capacity depending on whatever their situation is. But we train at 5 p.m. at night so that the kids can still have jobs. And then we got to try to find a way to get them here. So back to the actual question and answer. We're very similar to you. The goal is always to have more, but 30 to 40 kids that live in the area and conversations about why it's more important that we have more.
No, I mean it's
You're muted. Oh, there you go.
yeah. Sorry, I think
Yep.
no, it's definitely something like the and one thing that I'll say, and you kind of touch on this too, is like it can be from us. We can like I feel like I do a great job of explaining why the summer is so important and getting them to understand why it is. But it's like the minute you go home, like if I'm sending you a text or your position coach is sending you a text of like, hey, you coming up in the summer, versus like if your buddy on the team, if the guy in your same position group, if you're starting quarterback, if you're starting linebacker, like if they're like, hey man, like I'm going up in June, like I'm going back to Fairmont in June, like would love to see you there training with me. Like that's going to mean a lot more than like coming from a coach. Like as anything, any type of player led development, player led leadership is going to mean a lot more. Let's do a couple of, like, I don't know, maybe rapid fire kind of type questions here. This may not be a short answer, but what do you guys like? How should success be measured as a strength coach?
Ooh, that's a great question. How many athletes reach out to you 10 years in the future? It's more about relationships. Like the greatest coaching relationship that I have in my entire life, and Gabe probably say exactly the same thing, is with our high school wrestling coach, who we talk on the phone with at least once every 3 months. We'll get on the phone for like 2 or 3 hours at a time and catch up about life. That's the greatest coach I've ever had in my entire life. We could win every game. I tell our athletes this. There's a very real reality that like I coached an athlete for an entire year and they get no better because they didn't put anything into the training, right? We didn't try very hard. Maybe the sleep wasn't good, nutrition wasn't good, right? Like we could win every game. We could go 0-10. We had some teams at Allegheny who were downright bad. Like I remember watching our volleyball team scrimmage against Grove City College the first week I got to Allegheny from watching Division I volleyball, and I was like, man, we're really bad. It doesn't matter, right? The impact of a coach goes well beyond sets and reps, strength training metrics, wins and losses. So like my hope is that I get invited to some of my players' weddings. My hope is that they text me 10 years down the road and I have conversations like I do with my current high school wrestling coach with some of them 10 years down the line.
Yeah, I think it's awesome, Gabe.
I think Corey has the most notoriously used answer. But what I talk to most people, like if we're looking truly intrinsically, because a true measure of success is how you view yourself. Do you actually enjoy what you do? That's how I think what strength conditioning actually ends up being the longevity aspect of our jobs. Because if you don't enjoy what you do, you're going to find a way to get out of it. So whether it's wins and losses, whether it's relationship oriented with the athletes, whether it's the department that you work in, what you do from a day-to-day basis, strength conditioning coach success is typically measured intrinsically within yourself, outside of wins and losses, outside of numbers. So if you enjoy what you do, then you'll probably stay at a job for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree both of it. I think it's definitely impact. I think it's not, what, like we could all sit here and like brag about which of our athletes have the highest squats and the highest power cleans and all that, but I think it's bigger than that. I think it's definitely like which of our athletes enjoy, like how do our athletes enjoy being around us and the environment that we've created as coaches, and then also like do we enjoy that too? And something that I say all the time is like if I'm not having fun as a coach in the weight room, and I love talking shit, like I just love it. It's something that I love doing. Like especially our male athletes, like they're gonna hear from me. Like especially if I found out something that I'm better than, like if I do a fly 10 and I ran faster than you today, and you're a college football player, you're gonna know that a 36-year-old just ran faster than you today. Like I'm going to let you know that, and sometimes that might be a little bit harsh, but sometimes it's just reality too. Like you gotta find some way to make it fun. But if I'm not having fun, there's no way in hell that I can expect 18 to 22-year-olds to also be having fun. Like it's got to be an enjoyable environment. Like it's got to be tough. It's got to be challenging. There's got to be accountability and discipline and all that stuff. But it's also like at the end of the day, like we want them to enjoy it, because kind of like what Corey said about how like none of those girls from the Allegheny volleyball team are ever going to play professional volleyball. They're never going to make a penny playing volleyball. Most of our girls are never good. Like none of our girls are ever going to make a penny playing volleyball. So like we just want to like they just need to enjoy the time that they're here, and hopefully we taught them how to squat so that when they're 50 years old, they still know how to squat safely. Like I think I think that's a big aspect of it. If you guys were coaching any other sport, or if you like if you weren't a strength coach, what sport do you think you'd want to coach?
Okay, so I definitely coach wrestling. I know Gabe probably says the same thing because I wrestled in college for a couple of years. Love the sport of wrestling. Have a background in wrestling. But I also love saying this because I just had somebody else, like we were at the CSCCA conference, and my buddy from New Mexico, who's not East Texas A&M, he's like, Corey, you ever think about like not being a strength coach and working in like on like Wall Street or something like that? And I'm like, I could never do that. But I did at one point think that I could be like a math teacher or like do some sort of like hard labor for a job that's like physically demanding. But I coach wrestling.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good answer.
Yeah, that answer is predicated on Corey being a brainiac. Just so you know, Corey's smart as anybody. My first love, and from a sport perspective, was basketball. So if I was going to coach, I'd probably coach basketball. Um, Again, football is normal, but man, does basketball hit different if you're just banging out something on somebody else. If it's one-on-ones, if we're 3-on-3s, when you watch basketball players do what they do, the environment, the emotion, the success and the failure, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I agree with that. One of my favorite athletes we've had at Fairmont, Isaiah Sanders, he plays professionally now, but he was like, when I first got here, he was like one of my least favorite guys because like he had never really trained, like especially in season before. But he came to be one of my favorite guys because he was just like a great personality guy. And like when he had his best games out here, it just looked like he was in that quote unquote flow state. He was just out there he was having the time of his life. And it's just like, man, that's like
Awesome.
he'd be a cool guy to coach. He was a great guy to coach in the weight room, but he'd be a fun guy to have coached as a basketball coach as well. What's the like biggest like book or like the most impactful book that you've either read all time? It doesn't have to even be a strength conditioning book, or like that you've read recently, like that's made a kind of impact on you as a coach, you as a person.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't say the Bible is the most impactful personal development book that I've ever written or ever read in my entire life.
Yeah,
and
I should have probably said aside from maybe a religious text, the Bible. So
the books and the series of books that have made the most impactful, the most impact on my life have been the 531 books from Jim Wendler, because it was like my first delve into strength and conditioning. And honestly, like if I ever had a chance to like be in the same room as Jim Wendler, I don't even know if I'd be able to say a single word. I'd be like starstruck, awestruck, trying to figure out what to say. Not only because like sure the programming is cool, like the exercise selection is super simple, it's really easy to use, but it was just like such a mind blown experience for me to figure out like this is a profession that I can do. I can help people in this way, and so definitely 531.
yeah, no, that's cool. I've never read other. I mean, I've read the original book, but I don't think I've read really much. I didn't know there was like a whole series. I guess I don't know if I
There's
realized
like
that.
there's a second edition. There's for powerlifting. There's for football. There's a 531 forever. There's like a crazy amount of books.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, what do you got?
I'm gonna give you two. The first book that I was told to read outside of strength conditioning book was called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acker. And I would highly recommend that a lot of people read it, mostly because it teaches you just how important being happy is to having success in your career. Regardless of what you're doing, regardless of what career you're in, being happy is probably the number one thing that's going to determine whether or not you like what you do and enjoy getting up in a day. Secondly, I've given this book to multiple people, Relentless by Tim Grover. If you ever need a book to talk to you about whether or not you're doing what you should be doing at the level you're supposed to be doing it, you need some motivation, that's a fantastic book to get you on your high horse and get you to understand that you're in control of what your life looks like if you want to be.
Yeah, I've listened to that book. I know I've at least listened to it twice, I think.
Yeah.
I'm more of like an audiobook person because I have a 30-minute commute. So like I can knock out audiobooks like in like 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So
Yeah.
Happiness Advantage I took down. Intentional Edge, I forget which one of you guys said that earlier.
Yeah, that's Jeff Jones.
Is there any other books that you guys are big fans of? Like I'm always looking for books to read and to listen to. So anything else, just other books that you guys feel like are good?
I mean, I would be remiss right now if you didn't buy Nick DeMarco's new book that just came out.
Yeah,
I'm currently reading that. So
I know I've seen it. What's it? Remind me what it's called again?
the director's manual, essentially.
Director.
I know that Elon Cruz also put out the 8 vector system book.
Yep.
I know you mentioned that in your talk at the West Virginia State Clinic, or I think
Yep.
maybe it was Dylan that mentioned that. But that Elon Cruz does a really good job.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that, and I really like the quadrant system, takeoff, like those books by Daniel Bove as well. They're really good books. All right, what about favorite lift, and then favorite like lifting song, training song, or band,
That's a
or
great
just genre?
question. Okay, so my favorite lift to do personally is probably the snatch from the floor. I love like I've been back and forth with like Olympic lifting. And I went down to go watch my buddy compete at the Arnold, and I've done some competitions myself in weightlifting. But I love the sport. of weightlifting, and I've been like I taught myself how to snatch when I was in high school because we weren't doing that. It was part of our football wrestling stuff, and so I love the snatch. Um, Favorite lifting song? That's a great question. Okay, maybe like there's the album. I think the album is called This Fire or something like that by Killswitch Engage. There's a song. It's like there's This Fire, there's My Curse. Tons of the Killswitch Engage songs are like Howard Jones, who's the lead singer of Killswitch Engage at the time of that album, is like maybe the greatest singer of all time.
Okay. I know some of their songs, but I'm not like a huge fan of theirs, so I'll definitely have to make sure I add some of those to the playlist just to check them out. But I know the one song that I'm thinking of is a good song. Gabe, what about you?
If I can use sprinting as an exercise, then I will. I just
1,000.
like being fast.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's
so
great.
I'll choose that if I have to choose a weightlifting exercise. I'll probably choose the clean or the hang clean. Even though I choose not to use it with my athletes, I just think it's one of the harder movements to get good at. And it's almost a relentless chase of being subpar when you go and watch what actually good Olympic lifting looks like, and you realize that there's a 13-year-old kid in China that can snatch your clean and jerk. But that one's fun. And then weightlifting song, I'm really a podcast guy, to be honest. When I lift, I rarely listen to music. I listen to people talk or I listen to audiobooks. But if I need a song, it's probably Welcome Home by Coheed and Cambria.
Well, I want to go back to the Olympic weightlifting thing real quick. But what podcast do you listen to the most?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Right now, it's probably Coach 'Em Up by Tim Riley, just because it's the newest one, and I like his personality. He has a lot of coaches that are currently in the field doing things and with different opinions on it.
He does a good job of just making it very like it's just like a bunch of like. Hopefully, what this is close to, I'm not trying to say I'm trying to be the Coach 'Em Up podcast by any means, but we're just like two people just hanging out and just chatting. Like they're not. It's not like an interview. It's not like a strict interview. It's literally just like they're just sitting there, chilling. I think it helps being in person. Like if we were all in the same room right now, it'd be a little bit different instead of us like staring at a computer screen, like in terms of just like the camaraderie that you would have and like the comfort that you would have. But I like his stuff.
Now, I will say real quick beforehand, I have to shout out my boys podcast. I have two former coworkers from Elon, one who currently works at Elon, Brian Chikuski, who I already said. The other one currently works for the Cubs, Christian French. They have a Bev Boys podcast where they talk about performance and rate energy drinks. So I think they have 100 episodes, and I've listened to every single episode. I gave them a shout out on the last podcast that I did. But if you're addicted to caffeine, like 99% of us are, you might like that one too.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely check it out. I'm probably in that 1% that's not addicted. I usually have one cup of coffee a day and that's it. I'm not an energy drink person. But the Olympic weightlifting thing, like I like it too. I mean, I definitely don't snatch as much as I used to. But I think like if you see even like let alone like sport of Olympic weightlifting, if you watch like a football player, like even our men's basketball, like I said, our men's basketball team this year did a great job. If I watch somebody do like a really fast, crisp, like power clean, like it's like one of the best things you can watch. Like it's such an awesome thing. Like I said, a snatch. Like you watch somebody do a really good, fast, like explosive snatch, like where it's not like they're like grinding it out as they catch it. Like it's like smack, like they're just getting under the bar as quickly as possible. Like that's like an art form to me, like in my opinion. Like I do martial arts. Like I wrestle. I do jujitsu now. And like I look at that as like a self-expression and all that, like all that kind of like cliche, like hippie kind of dippy shit with it. But I feel the same way like Olympic lifting. I feel like there's an aspect where like it becomes like a really like beautiful thing to watch somebody just throw a barbell as violently as they can and catch it. But I agree with you on the sprinting too. That's something that as I've gotten older, I think sprinting is the thing that kind of holds everything together in terms of athletic development. I think if you're doing Olympic lifts, if you're doing your big three power lifts, if you're doing plyometric, but you're not sprinting, I think you're leaving something on the table in terms of like just you as a person, like being a highly functioning human being. Which I was gonna ask too, do you guys follow like the Apex athlete stuff that Tim Riley and them are putting on? Like what's your guys' thoughts on that in terms of like I feel like if I would have ever wanted to try to do it, it would have had to been year one because it's going to get to the point now where like one of the guys ran like a 4.3 something 40 this year. It's like, there's no way that like I'm ever like my best 40 is like a 4.7. Like I'm not going to run
I was
like,
just
I'm not
talking
gonna
with my
compete.
staff about this morning because my full-time assistant Aaron was talking about it a couple months ago when it first started being a thing. But we're probably going to do like our own little, because you can just do the same exercises.
Yeah,
And
we've
you
done it.
can
We've
even
done it.
enter in your
Yeah,
scores online, right?
yeah, we've done
I
it. Our
figure,
staff's done it twice. We've
yeah,
done
I
it
think we're gonna do
twice.
that at the end of this summer. It's cool. It's like fitness is bigger than it ever has been. So it's
Yeah,
cool to see something in the fitness space that's more tailored towards like being a great athlete versus like not necessarily saying that CrossFit is not, but it's so generalized that you got to be so good at a couple different things. But it seems like the Apex thing is like a shortened, it's like a pentathlon, right? It's like
yeah,
the short version of a decathlon. Do something really really fast. You don't have to be good at the mile. You just got to grit through your mile. But to be really good at Apex, be fast, be strong, be powerful, and train for it.
yeah. Well, I think that's what I like about it too. Is like it kind of does give you, like, especially when you're a strength coach and we're all busy and like we kind of getting pulled in all these directions. It gives us like at least something to train for. Like, hey, I'm going to be good at bench, deadlift, sprinting, throwing a med ball,
Yep.
and do jumps. Like
Mhm.
you know it, and then do the mile just because it sucks and like I need to do it and get it done.
That's
But
right.
what do you got, Gabe? What's your thoughts on it? Like,
Well, before we do anything else, I'm going to touch on the love of Olympic lifting because when you grow up watching Cal Strength videos and freaking Donnie Schenkel throwing a barbell through the ceiling and yelling, it's really hard not to love what the Olympic lifts
Yeah,
do.
dude.
Just putting that out there because that's what Corey and I were watching on YouTube as kids. I love the concept of it. I really do. And again, like most, I would say, performance-based coaches are around a competitive environment for 90% of their life, but they don't get a chance to be competitive in some particular scenario unless they go out and search it. So another place to find it is within Apex now, which is fantastic. And I think it gives people that coach all of these particular athletic qualities for kids a chance to see if they would do it for themselves and if the programming would work on themselves. And it's sometimes it's tough to coach yourself like you coach your athletes and get yourself to do the things that you would want your athletes to do. But if you sign up for a competition, you pay money to go and compete with other people, and you're going to be put mano a mano, numbers don't lie type of style against somebody else. You better be willing to give the effort that you tell your athletes that you give.
yeah, I agree. And, my thing with that is like they need to distinguish it between like, okay, here's the former D1 athletes that are like signing up for it. Here's the washed up strength coaches like bracket. Like
Yes.
they need to start having two different brackets. And honestly, how old are you guys? Are you guys 30 yet?
Turn 30 this year.
Yeah, so like we can't be in the same age bracket. Like we gotta
That's
have
okay.
like I need to be in like a master's division. You guys need to be still
Yeah.
in like the adult division, and
Yeah.
there needs to be like levels. You're either the athlete, then NARP level 1, NARP level 2. Like
That would be
they need to
hilarious.
start spicing it out or splitting it out a little bit. No, it's awesome. Like I said, it's giving us. I'm big, and we can kind of wrap up with this. Like I'm big as a coach. You guys, we've talked about this before. Like we all train. Like I think it's something as a strength coach. If you stop training, you stop getting better as a strength coach. Like it's part of just how you're gonna like learn new things and try new things, and have that feel and that empathy for the athletes. But like I make my staff train. Like we have 3 days a week. We're in there as a staff. We have to lift. Like we close the weight room in the middle of the day for an hour so that we can all train, all compete, all talk shit, all try new stuff. So the Apex thing has been a cool thing because we've all played around with like, hey, like I'm better at this, I'm better at this. But like the Apex kind of gave us like as simple as it sounds, like it gave us like a little bit of a a recipe to like, all right, let's actually see who's actually better at this stuff and who's actually more like well-rounded. Because it's one thing to be the best jumper, but you suck at all the other. You suck at trap bar deadlift. You suck at running the mile. You suck at like bench press. Like so, it's given us like a good way to kind of test and see who's like the most kind of well-rounded coach. And like I said, at 36, all my coaches are like 25 years older, younger. Like you know what I mean. So it gives me something as I've gotten older to like compete with like younger guys and push myself and you know have fun with it, have fun doing it in training. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, what do you guys got? Do you guys make your staff train with you?
Currently, no. We mostly train all at the same time, regardless, but we're not doing the same thing.
Yeah.
At some point in the year, like I was preparing for weightlifting meet. Right now, my GA is doing some of his own programming for the summer, which I thought would be good for him. My GA and our assistant essentially ran through like the Sornex gauntlet this year of like Squatober and December and Benchuary, and
December,
we all
yeah.
did like we did Squatober together, and then we did the spring cleaning program together
Yeah,
this year.
I was following along with your spring cleaning. Like you hit some pretty solid numbers on that. for sure.
Yeah, I like Travis Mash is part of that like weightlifting come up from like when I was growing up, and I think he's a great coach. And so like I did the program last year just solely because it's Travis Mash, and I'll probably still do it again solely because it's the coach that's writing the program that I trust versus like spending a month doing the cleaning or whatever. But it's fun to get a chance to train as a staff for a little bit.
Yeah.
And like I'm gonna try in the school year. It's a little bit harder during the school year because our schedules are different since we're split up in 2 separate weight rooms to try to figure out when we can train together. But I'd like to try to get some more time for us to train together.
Yeah, for sure. Gabe, what about you?
I don't make my staff of 2 train together, but I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Again, I'm one of those people where in almost every job or position that I've had more success training with the people that are around me when it's decided individually and everybody gets together and does it because it's what they want to do versus saying I need to train at 10 a.m. regardless of what happens. We have a particular, for us right now, again, we have a block of time where I'll tell my GA, like, you can go do whatever you want to do. I'm going to train. Like, I'm going to get after it right now. And like our athletes walk through, they see me training at the same time every single day. They see what I'm doing. The door's always open. But like, I think that's one thing that as a young coach, that's probably what you need to do more than even worrying about the X's and O's. You should be reading, you should be trying to educate yourself, but there's nothing like a barbell hitting you in the face. There's nothing like getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and freaking testing something on yourself. And that's a good way to both get yourself to understand what the training is going to require from you and get an idea of what programming style is going to be conducive to performance for your athletes is by testing it out on yourself. And if you perform pretty well, it's kind of impressive, right? So like as an intern, you might be able to impress the person that's going to hire you if you perform pretty well and you're consistent with what you're doing. So
yeah, 100%. And I mean, again, that's something that I'm big on is like, you can't grow your coaching age if you don't grow your own training age. Like it's one of those things where you have to have a training. You can't, like I said before, you can't program this exercise if you don't know how to demonstrate it perfectly and you don't know how to do it. You haven't trained it. So I agree with you guys on that. Well, fellas, we've done basically 2.5 hours. It's damn near a Joe Rogan experience length of a podcast, but it's been a lot of fun. I feel like we definitely could keep talking. We'll maybe have to do another round at some point, maybe next summer. So you mentioned Summer Strong or Sore Next Corey. Are you guys going to Summer Strong? Have you guys thought about going?
No, we talked about going, but we won't go this year. That might be a trip that we make in the next couple of years.
I'm taking most of my staff this year. It's a lot of fun. I went last year by myself. I met one of my former coaches down there. But it's awesome. It's like I've never been to CSCCA, but kind of he goes to CSCCA. You guys actually probably saw him there last week. But he told me it's basically like CSCCA, but it's more like a party. Like it's like all the same coaches, like all the same mentality of everybody's still trying to get better, but it's like everybody can kind of like unbutton their shirt, kind of relax, and it's like more of like we're hanging out and we're just like shooting the shit as coaches as opposed to like trying to like impress each other and bump elbows with the people that matter. Like it's like you can go up to anybody there and just like start a conversation. Like literally, like you'll be going through the lunch line, you'll sit down and you'll just find an open chair on the table and people will just sit down next to you and you've never met them in your life, you have no idea who they are, and you just start talking to them, and it's like it's like a very relaxed way to kind of network and stuff. So I'm looking forward to it and taking some of my guys, but you will definitely have to try to get together and hang out at some point. We obviously got the state conference, hopefully sometime again. Hopefully it's going to be at Shepherd this year.
Yep, I hope so.
Hopefully. So, well, fellas, I appreciate it. I'll get this published at some point and maybe post it later this week, if not next week for sure. All right.
Cool. Hey, well, we appreciate you having us on. Definitely cool experience for us to be able to be on something together like this, and obviously, honored to be on a podcast in the same vein as Tony Holler. So it's good stuff.
Well, that's I guess that's true. I mean, I'm so honored. I'm still kind of fortunate, like it worked out the way it did, like I said. So I appreciate you guys being on here. It's really cool to connect with you guys again. So thank you guys.
Yep, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Yep, have a good one.
You too.